Instances where bandits would run off with the ballot box and it could be thrown in the river or hidden away somewhere. That was not free elections.
Indonesian president in fact said, we are learning very closely from ECI, Election Commission of India. What kind of endorsement do you want? Indonesia is the third largest democracy in the world.
पोल्स हुए थे पश्चिम बंगाल में 35,000 जगहों पे किसी और को नॉमिनेशन नहीं भरने दिया था. इसको कहते हैं हम लोग मैल प्रैक्टिस.
पुलिस जगह जगह आईडी चेक करने के नाम पे मतदाताओं को वापस भगा देती है और कुछ वर्ग विशेष के मतदाताओं को बूथों तक नहीं जाने देती है.
जनता से पूछने का काम बड़ा आसान है कि चेंज लाओ, ये करो, वो करो. पावर आपके हाथ में. शो अस व्हाट यू आर मेड ऑफ, प्रैक्टिस व्हाट यू प्रीच.
कि जब राहुल गांधी अपना हाथ दिखाकर घूमते थे और कहते थे अब होगा न्याय है, और घर बैठे लोगों को 72,000 रुपीज अ ईयर हम देंगे. अप टू 20% हाउसहोल्ड्स इन आवर कंट्री, 72,000 रुपीज टू 20% हाउसहोल्ड्स इन इंडिया. Do you even know what a mind-boggling number that is financially? And if India can bear that kind of a number? No. तो जब अपनी बारी आती है आप किस भी प्रकार की बातें करते हैं, लेकिन यहाँ पर जो सरकार प्रॉमिस करती है वो डिलीवर करती है ना, तभी तो बार बार चुनकर वापस आती है.
अगर इलेक्शन रिग करना है तो आप 240 सीट लेके क्यों रिग करेंगे? प्राइम मिनिस्टर की अपनी विक्ट्री मार्जिन 5 लाख कम हो गई 2019 से बनारस में. So these are some of the questions we need to ask because there is a very strong optics and perceptions.
There is no rigging because the government is not perfect at rigging elections. Now my only counter to that, sir, is that हम 12 साल से कहते आ रहे हैं कि सरकार बहुत कुछ कहती है, करके नहीं दिखा पाती. Just like they cannot govern, they cannot rig elections perfectly either. Elections should not just be free and fair. They should manifestly and undoubtedly be seen as free and fair by every single citizen of this country, and that today, unfortunately, is not an assumption I can make.
देखिए, एक बात ईमानदारी से कह दूं, मेरी पार्टी में टिकट के लिए कोई पैसा नहीं लिया जाता, ईमानदारी की बात. लेकिन
कहीं तो रुक जाइए, कहीं तो रुक जाइए. ये तो
नमस्कार. दिल्ली यूनियन की इस 5वीं परिचर्चा में आप सभी का हार्दिक स्वागत है. दिल्ली यूनियन एक ऐसा मंच है जहां देश के सबसे ज़रूरी सवालों पर हम पूरी सभ्यता और सम्मान के साथ बहस करते हैं. हम दोनों तरफ के सबसे मजबूत और सशक्त आवाज़ों को एक ही मंच पर लाने की कोशिश करते हैं, क्योंकि किसी भी लोकतंत्र की ताकत उसी बहस की गुणवत्ता में है जिसे वो खुले मन से करने का साहस रखे. आज हमारा विषय है भारतीयों के जीवन से काफ़ी जुड़ा हुआ है, हमारे चुनाव. हमें गर्व है कि हम दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी लोकतंत्र के हिस्से हैं, और किसी भी लोकतंत्र की बुनियाद इसी बात पर टिकी है कि उसकी संस्थाएं कितनी सशक्त हैं. 75 साल से भी ऊपर यह देश, जो शायद सबसे अधिक विभिन्नताओं से भरपूर है, अपनी इन्हीं संस्थाओं के बल पर एक सशक्त गणतंत्र के रूप में उभरा है. आज हम एक मंच पर पूरी स्पष्टता और पूरे सम्मान के साथ यह देखने जा रहे हैं कि चुनाव आयोग की संस्था सशक्त और निष्पक्ष है कि नहीं. For the world's largest democracy to remain worthy of that name, a vote must not only be counted, it must be trusted. So tonight we put the difficult questions very clearly. This House believes that the Election Commission of India functions without undue influence from the ruling government. I repeat, this House believes that the Election Commission of India functions without undue influence from the ruling government. The real question is also whether we can thrash out suggestions worthy of our great republic and how we can improve its credibility altogether. To debate this, we've brought together voices who've contested these very questions in the courts, in parliament, in our newsrooms, and in the ballot box itself. Today, we're joined by a very illustrious panel to help us discuss this very pertinent topic. Joining us firstly, we have Shri Salman Khurshid ji, a senior Congress leader, former Union Minister for Law, Corporate Affairs and External Affairs, and author of the recent Contesting Democratic Deficit, the Story of the 2024 Elections, which explores the very ideas we're discussing. Across from him, we have Dr. Anand Ranganathan, scientist, best-selling author, JNU professor, and one of the most recognizable public intellectuals on our screens today. We're also joined by two very prominent members of the bar, Mrs. Pinky Anand, senior advocate, former additional solicitor general of India, and a long-standing voice at the bar and of the BJP, and Mr. Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate of the Supreme Court, who is a firm voice for civil rights and an expert on constitutional law. Bringing the data to the table, we're also joined by Dr. Sajjan Kumar, a JNU-trained psephologist who runs his own political research firm, Practice. Alongside him, we're joined by Mr. Anish Gawande, spokesperson for the NCP, Sharad Chandra Pawar, and a Rhodes Scholar and a graduate of Columbia University. और उत्तर प्रदेश की 2027 में की सियासत को समझाने के लिए दो अहम आवाजें भी हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं, मिस चारू प्रज्ञा, advocate, BJP spokesperson, and a prominent voice of the party's Yuva Morcha, as well as in Western UP, and last but not least, Mr. Rajkumar Bhati, who leads the Samajwadi Party's efforts in Western UP and is familiar to anyone who follows our national news debates. आज इस मंच पर हर सम्मानित वक्ता अपनी बात इस तरह रखेंगे कि हमारा उद्देश्य सिर्फ बहस जीतना नहीं है, बल्कि देश के युवाओं को यह दिखाना है कि भारत आज भी बड़े से बड़े सवाल पर पूरी गरिमा और आदर के साथ संवाद कर सकता है. I would now like to invite my colleague Aditya to explain the rules of the procedure as well as the sequence of events for today. And I thank you all for being here, and I hope you enjoy the debate. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Shubham. My name is Aditya Karnik, and today I'll be explaining the proceedings of today. Today's format has been carefully designed to encourage a sharp, engaging, and respectful exchange of ideas. We will begin with our 8 speakers presenting their arguments in a head-to-head format. Each speaker will be given 8.5 minutes to present their case. During these speeches, points of information or POIs will be permitted. A POI is a brief interjection from the opposing side intended to question or challenge a point being made. Members may indicate a POI by raising their hand. However, it is entirely at the discretion of the speaker holding the floor deciding whether to accept the POI or reject it. We request that all POIs remain concise, relevant, and respectful. Following the individual speeches, we will have a short break during which we have a brief stand-up comedy segment planned for everyone. After the segment, we will move into a 20-minute panel discussion and question and answer session. This will include questions exchanged between the two sides as well as questions from you, the audience. At the conclusion of the debate, we will conclude a vote on the motion. Both a pre-debate and post-debate ballot will be held, and the winning side will be determined by the greatest shift in opinion between two. In fact, on your seats right now, you have the pre-voting ballot, and we request everyone to make a tick or cross on the option they want to. After this, we also request all our speakers to adhere strictly to the allotted time limits. We have a bell that we will press once before the 30 seconds and then continuously once the time has elapsed. Participants are expected to conclude promptly according to the limits. Personal remarks and interruptions outside POIs will not be permitted, as we aim to maintain a space for a thoughtful, constructive, and respectful dialogue. The head-to-head matchups and the speaker order are as follows. Dr. Pinky Anand versus Mr. Sanjay Hegde, Dr. Anand Ranganathan versus Mr. Salman Khurshid, Ms. Charu Pragya versus Mr. Rajkumar Bhati, Mr. Sajjan Kumar versus Mr. Anish Gawande. With that, I now request Raj to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Ditya. Our first speaker for the proposition is a senior advocate at the Supreme Court and former additional Solicitor General of India. She's also a senior leader within the Bharatiya Janata Party, bringing decades in the courtroom and in public life to the stage tonight. Please welcome Pinky Anand.
So, ladies and gentlemen, indeed, I think the first indication that this House does believe that there are free and fair elections, in fact, fair and free, to put it straight, which is free from undue central government influence. The introductor, so to say, I think introduces slightly differently, but let's take it at that. He also said that it will be a speech. No, it will not be a speech. It is a debate. And the debate is meant to actually invite comment from everybody and from each other, and to spice up our lives as well as spice up our arguments as they are. And indeed, we are lawyers. I mean, so many of us are. So we'll take the field on that ground. But I think the greatest indication of the fact that there are free and fair elections in this country, I think, is demonstrated by two things today. One, the presence of such a large number. Indeed, it is very enterprising to see the Delhi Union, which is a voluntary organization, has been able to put together so many people to hear. I know that you youngsters do prefer more spice than a narrative, but nonetheless, it is my job also to take up a narrative on this side of the floor, so I will. The second indication of the fact that the House does believe that it is fair and free elections is demonstrated by the elections of 2024. The youngsters, 18 to 29, I don't know how many of you will agree with that age, but be that as it may, whether you agree or don't, the 18 to 29, you had almost 20 crore voters in India contesting, or rather giving their indication as to what life is about and what India is about and what the future of India is. As the introductor again said, I think it's quite true. India is looked at the greatest election mechanism that happens in the world, and it is credited for that. And that is why I think one of the propositions, if you break up the subject into free and fair, in the first instance, the free part is rather easily demonstrated. There is no doubt about it. It started in 1952. We've had 18 elections down the line, and the voting percentage has increased from 17.32 crore eligible voters to 96.8 crore eligible voters. Of course, the population has, and we have 100 million as we speak. But the point is, still look at the increase that has happened down the 18 years, the 18 elections that have happened. The increase of polling booths, 1.96 lakh polling booths, 10.54 now, 1952, 2024. And these are what the figures seem to represent, aside from the fact, and a very notable fact, if I may bring up a gender point also, with everybody's permission. Basically, the gender equality subject today is this 0.02% difference in gender. The youngsters who are voting. So to my mind, when we demonstrate today, anybody can go and vote. Anybody does go and vote. You express your wishes. Where is the question? Look at the voter turnout. Look at the state turnouts, not only the general elections of the country. 18 elections, as we said. Bihar, we had 64.66. West Bengal, we had 92.47%, and I think it is incredible. In fact, we all saw, if some of you are from Delhi, everybody was transmitting from here and transporting themselves from even Delhi, and we had a shortage of quite a few situations because people all went to express their wishes, and they went with a complete fervor saying, we want, of course in this case, Mamata Banerjee out. And it happened that way, and that is the net result of it. That is what the situation came to. Haryana, 67.9%. I mean, I'm just giving you some figures because it demonstrates the fact that the people of this country, you people, believe in the fact that there are free and fair elections, because otherwise you wouldn't go and vote. Incidentally, today we also have nota. So there is a provision for saying, I will not vote because I don't want to express my vote. I don't believe in anybody. But that is not the case. Nota is hardly used very much in our country. And the evidence is clearly because you believe in the fact that I do want to vote and express. What is voting? What is elections? Elections is expressing your desire to have a governance which you believe in. And the fact that we withstood all this challenge of time, supported, by the way, I remember these discussions during 2014, 2020, 19, 2024 elections to say the world over is looking at how India is able to do this incredibly marathon exercise with fair ease. I'm not saying it is perfect. Nothing is perfect. Nothing in a democracy is perfect. It will always have ups and downs, and we'll be having to face them. But the freeness of the situation is our expression. So I basically curtail it to this, to say, I am free to vote the way I want to, and I vote. That means I demonstrate the proof, and the evidence of the pudding is in the fact that I vote, and all of you vote. And I'm sure all of you must have voted, as many of you were eligible at that time. I could see there are some youngsters, including the introductors, who might not have been able to vote. So that is another matter. But the eligibility fact and the youth of our country is actually demonstrative. Again, one of the indications I remember in 2014 in particular, I do remember the agenda that came around. What was the agenda? Development and prosperity. There was one single indication of what the people wanted of this country and how they expressed themselves. So coming back to the other aspect of fairness, is it fair? Why is it not fair? What don't we have? What are we always pressing? Why is the opposition and everybody else always crying hoarse and changing the goalpost. You start with raising issues against EVM, then you go to VVPAT, then you go to SIR, then you participate in SIR, then you say SIR is bad. And so whichever way you go down the line, you include disqualification, you tear up the bill on the floor of the House. I mean, these are the kind of things that do happen. Why is there an opposition to the fairness? We have gone down a long route. And the route basically starts from, if I may again go back to some of the details, EVMs came in 2004. Prior to EVMs was another paper trail, a lot more situations which are out of hand. And I'm speaking about the country. I'm not speaking about which party was there at that time. These were introduced and have come into force. VVPAT came for 100% adoption in 2017. So much so that both these mechanisms put together, the paper trail, these were challenged, etc. Various things happened. It sustained the challenge and it's been held. It is perfectly valid and in accordance with the legal procedures under the Representation of People's Act and the Constitution. But I don't want to go into sheer law. I am talking about the credibility of the system and the processes that have been set down to ensure the fairness that people's views are expressed in the elections. And I am not saying in democracy people don't try and persuade you. That is a job. In a democracy, yes, we all try. We all try in this party or that party or any other party. The attempt is to persuade voters to say, I come to my side, vote for my political party. So therefore, that persuasion part is yet one other story and it goes across surface. So there's nothing to distinguish between one party and the other party. And India, of course, is almost a developed nation. I mean, Viksit Bharat in 2047 and our trillions down the line is very much there, but still we are a developing nation and we are yet to catch up on this part of the story. But coming back to EVMs and VVPATs, which I was last talking about in 2017, in fact, you have had global recognition of our procedures. So Indonesia, for example, has entered into an MOU with India to import VVPATs and EVMs as they stand. And that is the credibility of the system. Other countries have endorsed. Indonesian president, in fact, said, we are learning very closely from ECI, Election Commission of India. What kind of endorsement do you want? Indonesia is the third largest democracy in the world. And that is the testimony that another country is giving you, not that we need endorsement from everybody, but this is the endorsement, the global recognition of the fact that you do have these processes into place which ensure that firstly, and by the way, the amount of contentions that have been raised against EVM are amazing, but not any of them have withstood the challenge of time, and they've withstood judicial scrutiny as much as people's scrutiny. People will always question something or the other. There's a process of storage, there's a process of ensuring that they are available. I myself did the post-poll violence in West Bengal, the case in court, and ultimately it was ensured that you have those EVMs available for scrutiny. They are all available for scrutiny. You can't walk out of it, but this is the fairness of the elections that we are talking about. Section 33C, introduced in the Representation of People's Act. You had that. What did we do? And I worked on it. Disqualifying people who are convicted. You have people who are convicted of over 2 years as far as conviction is concerned. Disqualify them. You had a whole line of people who were disqualified. You had Lalu Prasad Yadav who was disqualified, Jayalalitha who was disqualified. You had Anand Singh who was disqualified from the RJD. You had Azam Khan who was disqualified. People who do not merit being there. Well, the procedure was there that please have them out. You again had a procedure where Section 8 was amended of the RP Act. Let me be clear what it is. Disqualification, as all of you know it. And that disqualification issue, incidentally, was very strong for us. At which stage, yet another matter. But the point remains, people came to know what their candidates stood for and had a chance to rebut it. And say, I won't vote for you. I know your record. If I still want to vote for you, that's my wish. This is what democracy is there ahead of you. As far as the question of disqualification is concerned, people were disqualified because you did not want wrong people to be standing. That's always been a controversial issue, by the way. Do I have a right to stand simply because I'm convicted? I may have an appeal. So all those issues are at large and will remain at large. And it is ultimately your choice. But today, there is disqualification which has happened, ensuring that people who have at least a record of something which is heinous or otherwise a punishment which is to be awarded to them should be excluded from the process of elections, and they should not be able to come forth. Then we have the last sequence of SIR. Now, SIR came again, hue and cry, Haryana, hue and cry. Don't have this, there's a Haryana bomb, people are voting, false voters. Well, you had the special intensive survey. Even that was opposed. Mamata Banerjee came to court. She argued in person, as all of you know. I'm sure some of you watched what happened there. But ultimately, please believe me, what happened after SIR? After SIR, 211 seats which TMC lost. And there was only 8 election petitions that were filed. Only 8 election petitions, despite Mamata Banerjee saying, please fight this issue, go for it. What does that show you? 92% again, back to West Bengal. I think West Bengal is the most critical example of what happens in this country as far as elections are concerned. Go for it, vote, express yourself. And that's what you have. And the satisfaction that has been expressed has also been endorsed by the performance of the government and the way the government has acted. 6.8% growth as far as the country is concerned. You have such figures which demonstrate to you in the world. We are the 3rd largest economy as far as PPP is concerned. We are the 6th largest economy as far as GDP is concerned. We are the youngest economy in the world. And thankfully, and thank God for all of you there who will take this world forward. And if you still want a change, you have next election. So what is not free and fair, don't cry horse. Don't say this is bad and that is bad. These are the systems in place. Some revisions, some modalities maybe. So I think I end my conversation. That goes for my bell. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an informative speech. Now, before we move on to the next speaker, I would be looking for questions based on this speech, first from the panel and then from the audience. So if the panel has any questions, they can ask. Okay, now we'll move on to the audience. Does the audience have any questions for the speech? Yes, over there.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. So you talked about the fact that we have a free election because so many people are going out and voting. And that is a demonstration of how we as a country are still ensuring that we have free elections. I want to ask you that how exactly are we going to consider it as a metric of free elections, since we as the citizen of India don't have any other way to express ourselves other than voting. So even if we are not happy with whatever system of voting, whatever way of elections is happening, that is the only resort we have. That is why we will still exercise that right despite it not being free maybe.
Very well put. I'm afraid I never thought of it like this, that you only have one resort, so what do you do? I have to do this. But as I mentioned, you do have NOTA. You do have NOTA for purposes of expressing A, that you're not happy with the elections, or B, happy with the candidates, and therefore you want, which is broadly the same thing as elections. So there is that position that we have all brought about into being after a lot of discussion to say, I can express my view in favor of saying, I don't believe in this system, and therefore in that fashion. Secondly, you do have, and we do have even today, several petitions in courts. For example, in West Bengal, there are almost about, I believe, 100 odd election petitions, though nothing has happened in them. Not election petitions, I beg your pardon, writ petitions, which are challenge the election commission's, for example, orders. So, I mean, in any case, we have chosen this way of law to say we have a democratic system. Democracy is an unruly horse and everybody accepts it. There's no other way. So either you have what you have. Democracy, you have dictatorship, you have communism, what else you authoritarian regime, whichever way you like it. These are the systems ahead of you. If I was given a choice today, I'm not saying you have to, it's your choice, and you as a youngster, I'm not sure you are millennial or alpha or whatever there, but I mean, let me tell you my view. I would choose democracy over anything else any other day, and I do not want to be in any other repressive regime which doesn't allow me to express my way. As long as I am allowed expression one way or the other, that is what determines for me that I have a right to choose what I want to choose, and I will get broadly what I do deserve to get and have asked for.
Thank you so much, ma'am. One request to the audience is please keep your questions a bit concise so that we can save time. Thank you.
Now, opening the opposition is a senior advocate at the Supreme Court, widely respected for the work he's done defending civil liberties and constitutional rights in our country, whether inside a courtroom or in public forums such as this. He's become one of the country's most respected voices on constitutional law and democratic freedoms. Please welcome Shri Sanjay Hegde.
Good evening. Whenever we speak about elections, my mind goes back to 1977. I was a 12-year-old boy then. In the beginning of March 1977, both countries in the subcontinent had elections. Zulfikar Ali Khan Bhutto went first in Pakistan. He won the elections. About 3 weeks later were the Indian elections. And the joke in Pakistan was, a message has come from Indira Gandhi that you can have Kashmir, but please send us your chief election commissioner. That was the story of how Pakistan perceived its election commissioner. And what happened? What happened thereafter was that in later March, Indira Gandhi lost the elections. She went out of power. Shortly thereafter, the late lamented General Muhammad Ziaul Haq walked into Pakistan's headquarters and said that I've taken over. We will have free and fair elections in 90 days. And he stayed on for 11 years and in the meanwhile hanged Bhutto. Indira Gandhi came back to power in 3 years. So what you have today, if you look back 50 years ago, is a comparison of two systems. A system that did not work there across the border, and in India, a system which then promised that you could change your ruler at the ballot box. You did not have to rely on military tanks. But today, I venture to say that we have kept Kashmir, but we may have borrowed some of the fairness of the Pakistani election commissioners. Today, I venture to say that we can go to and tell Pakistan, no, we don't need your election commissioners. We have become Atmanirbhar in that respect. Because today, what happens is, an election is fair when the voter can choose without fear, when every eligible citizen can actually vote. An election is fair when the playing field is level, the money is visible, the umpire is neutral, and the count is beyond suspicion. Now, let us take the 3 lives of a vote. It must be cast in secret, counted in the open, and tallied to the last slip. Today, if you ask, where are the Form 17s? Can you read them? Today, if you ask, where are the voters' lists? Can you put them up in machine-readable format so that it can be scanned through easily? No. Does the Election Commission oblige? Never. What is happening today is that the Election Commission is become an umpire as fair as the FIFA umpires who umpired Argentina versus Egypt. We know that the umpire in that game had a magic message. Aega to Messi hi. So when the game looks that irrespective of what heart, what soul, what effort you put in, aega to Messi hi, then one has to figure out, is the fairness of the umpiring leading us back to the situation which the Pakistanis found themselves in the beginning of March 1977. When fair elections do not look to be happening, or when decisions go always one way, they go about as inevitably as umpire Steve Bucknor's finger whenever Sachin Tendulkar was batting. That is what is happening primarily because your umpire, the Election Commission, is elected now or is selected now by a group which includes the Prime Minister, a minister in his cabinet, and the leader of the opposition. The Supreme Court said, look, there is no law. Let's have the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, and the Chief Justice. So what did Parliament do? Parliament said, okay, we will immediately make a law. Out you go, Mr. Chief Justice. There will be a 2:1 majority in the way we select our election commissioners. And what happens? You see, there was a gentleman called Arun Goel who was a serving bureaucrat on a Thursday. He took voluntary retirement, which was very speedily processed on a Friday. He was appointed election commissioner on the same day and in office by Monday. The Supreme Court said, what was this lightning speed? We've never seen files move that fast. But then Mr. Goel suddenly resigned just before the 2024 elections. And his 2 replacements were chosen in a single day from a list of over 200 names which the leader of the opposition handed over. And then, who were those 2 names? We know them. So what you have is a system where whatever game you play, you will have pre-selected umpires who, in a pinch, can always be trusted to make the right decision. They need not be told what the decision is. There's a brilliant sentence somebody told me in French, which says that, if you're given an order, you tend to resent it. But if you can anticipate an order, then you revel in your cleverness. The election commissioners of India are very clever people. They can anticipate exactly what the system wants. Because why? Supposing they anticipate wrongly, what happens? They saw what happened to one of their own. Ashok Lavasa said, what the Prime Minister said during the elections, during those speeches, the communal hate that was put out was wrong. There were income tax raids on his family. Ashok Lavasa resigned and went off to the Asian Development Bank in Manila. So the election commissioners jolly well know that if they anticipate wrongly, then, well, there might be consequences. Look at the money. Where does the money come from? Armies march on their stomach. We had a system of opaque electoral bonds. And when the Supreme Court struck them down and the data came out, 80% of the electoral bonds had gone to the ruling party. On the other side, there is very little to even put in petrol in their vehicles. So my point is that elections we have, are they fair? Have they been fairly supervised? And is the mechanism designed to see that the last Indian has a voice in our democratic palaver? The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is certainly no. Today we have an India where a citizen is not a citizen of the Union of India or the state of India in international law. The citizen lives today in a state of doubt on his citizenship. Because the Election Commission has knocked him out of during the SIR, put him in a suspect list, has no tribunals which can speedily process those cases, and in the meanwhile denied him rations so that he can live long enough to stay and vote in the next election. The citizen lives in a state of doubt, and the administration and the Election Commission today live in a state of denial of your citizenships. Today, I request this august House, please start and say that we are watching a rigged game. We will not endure this much longer. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech, sir. And I would again like to reiterate that the speeches can be bilingual. Right. Returning to the proposition, our next speaker is a professor at JNU and a scientist by training. Beyond academia, he has become one of the country's most prominent public commentators, known for his incisive arguments, fearless opinions, and unmistakable presence in India's public discourse. Please welcome Professor Anand Ranganathan.
Good evening, everyone. It's a real joy and a pleasure to be here and speaking before you. I would like to thank, please don't start the clock right now, or at least give me 30 seconds. Really would like to thank Delhi Union and the organizers for having this wonderful platform. And I've been watching these Delhi Union debates, and they're really, if there is one platform that is required in this country today, then it is this. So thank you so much for inviting me. Sorry? All right, okay. Yeah. Then give me 1 more minute before you start the clock then. No, and also it is especially good to be amongst a crowd that is full of lawyers, because I'm always worried about when would I need a lawyer. And also there are lawyers cutting across ideology and party spectrum. So if I'm arrested in a BJP state, I think Pinky ji would save me. If I'm arrested, looks increasingly likely Congress state, may I request Salman ji and Hegde ji to please represent me pro bono, not like Kapil Sibal, I don't. Look, let me straight away come to the matter. And one of the things that one learns by training as a scientist is that one must always stick to just the facts, not the opinions. Opinions can cover the facts like work covers Kaju Barfi, but nothing more than that. There are irrefutable facts, then one must go by. One must not be selective, one must be objective. One must not pretend and say that things are happening for the first time. So any idea that is investigated by a scientist, the first thing that the scientist has that thing happened before, good or bad. And that is a first sign that gives you an inkling that you don't run an agenda. Now let me come to whatever I have to say on this topic, which is India, or India is holding free and fair elections. Can I just say that it is embarrassing to be even discussing this as a topic 75 years after independence. As an Indian, people who have voices here, it is a matter of shame that we are still not able to decide emphatically in the favor of that we are holding free and fair elections. So I blame not just the people, because they can be unsure before they reach a decision. I blame the politicians for seeding this thought, and I blame a definitive authority in our country for not deciding one way or the other. Because the moment you let this doubt linger on and percolate down to the people who are voting, that's the worst thing you can do. So I blame the Supreme Court more than anybody else. So hence my need for a lawyer, because jail se pehle contempt aayega. Now, 3 things here. And I represent the public here. What does the public need to know when you're discussing this topic? 3 things. Does the public, do we, the common man and woman, do we trust the electoral system? Number 2, do we trust the people who are making the allegations? Antecedents is also very important. You would not trust Hafiz Saeed if he bats for feminism or Taliban. You would not trust Vijay Mallya if he says, I am honest and let's bat against corruption. And number 3, do we trust the people against whom allegations have been made? And I have to say this because I've forgotten whether I'm for or against. That usually happens whenever I speak. But there is a severe trust deficit amongst the people of India against all 3 entities. Now, what can we do about it? We need a solution. We just can't go on like this. Let me tackle this one by one. Now you can start the clock. Gaining some brownie points there. So, Is the Election Commission regulating your time? Time chori. Yes. So let me come tackle this one by one. पहले हम आते हैं जिन लोगों ने एलिगेशन लगाई हैं, कांग्रेस के हैं, ऑपोजिशन के हैं. उन पे मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि अगर आज आप कह रहे हैं कि वी कैन नॉट ट्रस्ट द चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर और द इलेक्शन एंटिटी, तो क्या आपको लगता है कि औरों के घरों में आज इंटरनेट नहीं आता? सब अंबानी को इतना हेट करते हैं कि जियो नहीं लेते, उनको अपनी हिस्ट्री नहीं पता। 60 साल से जब इस देश में इलेक्शंस हो रहे थे तो कैसे चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर सिलेक्ट हो रहा था? कोई कमिटी बनती थी? नहीं, प्राइम मिनिस्टर कहता था ये होगा चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर, प्राइम मिनिस्टर वुड एक्सटेंड इट टू द प्रेसिडेंट एंड प्रेसिडेंट वुड से ठप्पा लगा दो। How many examples do you want? And I'm not just saying people who retired at CECs then got Congress tickets and stood for elections. Many of them did. I'm talking about sitting chief election commissioners. There was one late, Mr. Naveen Chawla, who was accessory to a lot of crimes during the emergency, so much so that he was indicted by the Shah Commission. And the Shah Commission said, this man is unfit for public office. Well, he was made the election commissioner. But that's not all. When he was the election commissioner, the chief election commissioner wrote in an affidavit to the president that, ma'am, this man is leaking secrets to the Congress. When we have meetings, this man gets up on the pretext of a loo break और bathroom में जाके सब बता रहा है information. Please act on it. The president was, of course, during the UPA, Pratibha Patil ji. President acted on it. She made Naveen Chawla the chief election commissioner. ऐसे चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर बनते थे. अब आपका कहना कि आज गलत बन रहे हैं और हिस्ट्री नहीं बताएंगे तो लोगों को लगेगा अरे भाई अभी सब गलती हो रही है. Today at least things are better than what was happening previously, where it at the beck and call of the ruling dispensation, you would choose people who were indicted by the legal, quasi-legal authorities to not hold any public office, to hold one of the highest constitutional posts. That is the history. Number two, please do not interrupt. Sanjay, no, 1 second. This is not a television debate. No, 1 second. 1 second. Please. You will get your time. Please, once. Sanjay. We will be on times now shortly, so we can extend this. Number two, I ask a simple logical question. If you believe you are in legal trouble, you want to hire a lawyer, right? And you know that the lawyer and the law firm is totally corrupt, right? Raise your hands if you believe you would still hire that lawyer. Don't raise your hands on the panel, but otherwise on the audience. You wouldn't. That's what common sense tells you. Now, Rahul Gandhi has been tom-tomming, Adani is corrupt. Why is it that in erstwhile Congress-ruled states, he gave more than 1 lakh crore of contracts to Adani? It does not make sense. Likewise, a person of integrity, if he believes the elections are totally mala fide, they are corrupt, everything from top to bottom is corrupt, they are not free, they are not fair, why does he not boycott the elections? I would vote for him next time, although I'm a nota voter, because he's a man of integrity. The top 5 GDP producing India states, 3 उसमें से top 5 are under the Congress right now, using the same election commission, same election machinery. But he's holding office there. So much so कि post poll alliance भी हो रही है. जो कुत्ते बिल्ली की तरह लड़ रहे थे कि इसको वोट मत दो, इलेक्शन हुआ, उसके बाद उसकी पार्टी ज्वाइन कर ली, गवर्नमेंट ज्वाइन कर ली. This is the integrity, this is the face with which you are saying, raising allegations. Now let me come to the second point. The people on whom allegations are being made, there I have to say, we have to do a hell of a lot. Because Caesar's wife has to be above suspicion, and right now it is not. Because, absolutely right, the chief election commissioner should be chosen by the Prime Minister, the leader of opposition, and the Chief Justice of India. And who said this first? This is not a pop quiz, but let me tell you, it was Lal Kishan Advani. And who has blown away this thing? Narendra Modi. आपके अपने लीडर की बात आप नहीं सुन रहे. Obviously, there is suspicion. Why couldn't you do this? Why couldn't you have offices that are above the suspicion which is raised by any commonsensical person? Number two, and this is also very important. Right now, if I were to ask you, which person in India has the maximum immunity from prosecution. You would possibly say the president or the prime minister. Wrong. The law has been amended. Section 16 has come in. Chief Election Commissioner has more immunity than the Prime Minister of India. You cannot go to the court and say, I want to file a case against the Chief Election Commissioner. This flies in the face of democracy. This is still happening. And number 3, and this is very important, one of the biggest causes of corruption were the anonymous electoral bonds. And the moment they came in, I said, this is completely wrong. Why? Yes, you can monetize and digitize when companies want to give you money. But if they give you money anonymously, and then you go to the people to give us vote, for example, you go to the public and say, vote for my party, I will protect the forest. Unbeknownst to them, you have taken 10,000 crores from a mining company. You get elected, people are happy, yes, it's going to protect the forest. Next thing you know, the forest is being mined because you had no idea that the company had taken money anonymously. So that is immoral and wrong. Now, Chief Election Commissioner and the Election Commission of India did not raise objections. But here is the irony. I go to point number 1, people are making the allegation. If you believe, like Rahul Gandhi said, and I do, that anonymous electoral bonds were independent India's biggest scam, तो भाई उससे 1600 करोड़ रुपए लिए क्यों? और अगर लिए तो अभी तक वापस क्यों नहीं किए? Now I come to point number 3. Vote chori, duplicate votes. Yes, there are mistakes that Election Commission has done. Of course. Yes, there are discrepancies. Yes, there is negligence. Yes, there is laxity. But yes, if Rahul Gandhi says there were 11,000 duplicate voters in the Bangalore constituency, the BJP won, did you hear him say that there were 19,000 duplicate voters in Raebareli that his sister won? Or in Wayanad, there were 12,000 duplicate votes? These are discrepancies that have to be settled. And I want to end by saying, where is the Supreme Court? लोगों को इतना डर क्यों लगता है उसको criticize करते हुए? The logical discrepancy thing that has brought up was abominable. 27 lakh people in Bengal could not vote because of logical discrepancy. Yes, that algorithm was deciding one way or the other, fine. But they should have been decided before the elections took place. So my submission is कि सब मिले हुए हैं. Sorry, I don't mean to sound like Kejriwal, but unless or until 10 seconds. क्योंकि अब तो केजरीवाल भी मिल चुका है. Unless or until we decide that things are not happening for the first time, people who are making the allegations are corrupt, people against whom allegations are being made are corrupt, and the Supreme Court by not acting is corrupt. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ranganathan, for that very impassioned speech. I'd like to reiterate कि ये debate bilingual है. इसका मतलब है कि हम
already being scolded by her. Terry, हमें कहीं का नहीं छोड़ा तुम.
Anyway, so this debate is bilingual, first of all. So the rest of the speakers, please do speak in Hindi. It reaches the masses, and some speakers weren't comfortable in Hindi as well. That's why I made it bilingual in the first place, but I'd like for it to be in Hindi. And I now request Vidal to announce Mr. Salman Khurshid as our next speaker.
Representing the opposition, our next speaker is a former Union Minister of Law and as well as for External Affairs. He has been one of the most senior voices for the Congress Party with decades of experience in public policy, law and diplomacy. He has been at the forefront of constitutional and political discourse. Please welcome Mr. Salman Khurshid.
Distinguished colleagues on the panel, both sides, confused about what both sides means here. After the last speaker, I'm not even sure that I have to answer anything. Can we just simply say that there are no rules of defection in this panel, but there are some people who take defection somewhat easily, and they defect, but in the name of morality, in the name of democracy, I think we should allow that to happen. Except that when you're voting at the end, please keep that in mind as to how much of the case was conceded. There are some very important questions that were raised, important questions that were raised. And let me just say clearly that it's important if somebody concedes that there may be things that are wrong, that may be things that need to be corrected, there may be, things that need to be reformed. I think we should appreciate that and welcome it. But at the same time, we shouldn't be shy of admitting that there were things that were happening in a similar manner for a long time before the idea of reform and the idea of change came about. But that's true about all institutions. No institution is perfect, and in the beginning, no institution begins as perfect. Look at the number of amendments that have been made to the Indian Constitution. Now, if we really felt that the brilliant people who put the Constitution together didn't require a relook by subsequent generations, then the Constitution would have been static. But we've got constitutional amendments, one after the other, which I assume you all accept, that makes the Constitution a much better document than it might have been at the time in 1950. So that is true about institutions as well. We may have been monopolizing the appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner. In fact, there was only a Chief Election Commissioner. There were no election commissioners. It was subsequently that the idea of a multiple election commission was introduced. That was an improvement. That was an improvement because 3 can be better than 1, and 1 can be more dictatorial than the 3, etc. So there is a check and balance that was introduced. So let's get one thing very clear, that today we are not talking about what happened in history. Today we are talking about what might happen today. And there, I'm sorry, with great respect, I think the case has been conceded that what is happening today needs to change. And that's all we ask. We ask for no more. We only ask for what is happening today needs to change. Now, some of you are too young to remember, during the emergency, there was a famous judgment of ADM Jabalpur's judgment that took away fundamental rights, in a sense, saying, well, there is an emergency imposed. There are certain fundamental rights, including the right to liberty, being the right to habeas corpus, could be taken away. 25 years, we lost the election. We left the controlling place as far as governments are concerned. We lost the elections. Other people came. Other governments were formed. Other parliaments were elected. But for 25 years, ADM Jabalpur remained the law of the land, even though some judges questioned it. Some judges were worried about what ADM Jabalpur had done. It took 25 years. What was given by the father, Chandrachud, was finally overruled by the son, Chandrachud, 25 years later. Now, for these 25 years, are we going to hang the Supreme Court for having got the law of the land wrong? And what will we say the law of the land was for 25 years, etc.? These are fundamental questions. Now, we understand when we move forward in institutional governance, when we move forward in a democratic setup, things that we have done might require reform, might require modification, might require change. As long as we are moving towards something better all the time, that is the critical thing that we need to achieve. And I think that's possibly the basis of the debate that is happening here today. What do we have today? Is it good? Is it inadequate? Is it wonderful? Is it perfect? And how does it, of course, you want to compare, how does it compare with the past? But the past cannot be a justification of something that is adequate today. That is the critical point. So you have to have, when you believe in looking at institutions, you have to have a degree of skepticism. You cannot just close your eyes and say, I believe this is perfect, because nothing is ever perfect. Nothing can ever be perfect. Your skepticism tells you to investigate, to inquire, to be curious, and say, let us see, this could have been better or could it not have been better? So very clearly, if you have to have an institution like the Election Commission, how is the Election Commission selected? Let's not worry about how it was selected in the past. Let us worry about how it is selected today and how it ought to be selected. Both what is done and what ought to be done should be merged together, and how what ought to be done should be something very clearly, and I'm grateful to the previous speaker having indicated clearly that it should be done in a manner that can appear to the whole world to be fair and to be objective and to be transparent. And why should we shy off letting the Chief Justice of India participate in that selection where the Prime Minister and the Leader of Opposition would possibly take two ideological positions separately? Unfortunate that this should happen in our country. On some things, we can certainly hope that there should be agreement. But if there is no agreement, then there would be a tiebreaker, and the Chief Justice, in terms of a tiebreaker, would be ideal. Now, why is that not happening is a big question. The big question today is that much of what the Election Commission does is treated in a manner which is somewhat restrictive. Everything is restricted into a small window. If you challenge an election, you have to go to an election petition, quite rightly, and the election petition has to be filed within a certain number of days. Election petition, you have to sign on every page. Just to make a point, you have to sign on every page, and you fail to sign on one page, out goes the election petition. Why should the election law be so oppressive that what you want to put across is to say something truthfully that something went wrong? Why is it different from anything else that you have to establish in the administration of law, where an affidavit signed on one page is sufficient for you to be able to say that all the pages filed are pages that I support in this affidavit? Fundamental question. When election process begins, now the Supreme Court and all the High Courts say that election process has begun, we will not interfere. Is the SIR part of the election process? Is the delimitation part of the election process? Who is responsible for delimitation in Assam? Who is responsible for delimitation in Jammu and Kashmir? And any person not committed to any political party, but just being purely connected to Indian democracy and to the Indian voter, could look at the delimitation that is done there and say, this is not on, this is not fair. But our law, unfortunately, says that once delimitation is done, you cannot question it in a court of law. Should that be so? There is a good reason for it, and the good reason is that you cannot postpone things indefinitely by dragging them into court. Now, that is a very telling question. Why should things drag on indefinitely when they get into court? Why can't courts, like any other country in the world, any other democratic country in the world, take a decision quickly? And if the court says, we will not interfere in SIR, we will not interfere in delimitation, we will not interfere in however the administration of elections takes place, because we have a very small window, then there is something terribly, terribly wrong. We have to rethink the manner in which we ought to govern ourselves. Now, critical question. Many elections, many people will admit, are being decided because some very popular person is leading the campaign on one side, and you can't really complain about somebody being popular. But we also know that many elections on both sides, not necessarily on one side, are given away simply because of freebies that are given on the eve of the election. Now, we are told repeatedly, the law says you can't give freebies, you can't make promises that you should not be making, and yet we all know that mixers and color televisions and scooters and scooties are given at an election time. When do you begin this is a critical question. Sometimes they will say, this happened before the last date of nomination, and therefore we are not concerned with this. This happened before the last date of nomination, therefore we can't look at it. But should we not, if we are thinking about elections being free and fair, should we not really be looking at when the Supreme Court should intervene, when the courts should intervene and say, this is not permissible, this distorts the elections, this distorts the level field, etc., that we all demand for an election. Finally, this question about everything is validated by an election result. We won an election, therefore no questions can be asked about us. If that was the case with Indian, then the world history would tell you a different story. Even in our neighborhood, in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, we would be told the same story, that we won the election overwhelmingly. What happened 3 years later? What happens 4 years later? This is something that is a warning for us that whichever party we may be, whichever party is pleased with its performance in an election, we must be skeptical. We must remember that things can change, and things change very fast, particularly with a crowd like this. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khurshid and Mr. Ranganathan, for putting your points across so emphatically. I would just like to remind the audience that there are pre-voting ballots on your seat. So please vote, and if anyone doesn't have them, then our team will come and give you the paper ballots. Now, based on those two speeches, we'll be having a 3-minute panel discussion to entertain questions. Since before Mr. Sanjay Gray wanted to ask a POI as well, so we'll be entertaining that for the next 3 minutes. Thank you.
My point of information was with regard to Mr. Chawla, who was indicted by the Shah Commission. I'm a bit of a wizard and a bit of a nerd on such things. Mr. Chawla used to work for the DDA during the emergency, and he was cited for his role there. But who headed the DDA at that point of time? One Mr. Jagmohan. Where did he go? So it doesn't matter, as Mr. Khurshid said, it doesn't matter. The past doesn't matter, except to tell you that those bad examples need not be redone in the present or for the future.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
I think so. Yeah, it's working. Okay, good evening, everyone. Yes, I completely agree. The past does not matter, and what has happened in the past, if it was a malpractice, we should leave it in the past. But 2026 Vidhan Sabha elections in Kerala are not the past, sir. They just finished. Congress won those elections. It was a change of power from left to the Congress. And at that point of time, the Kerala CEO, Ratan Kelkar, just after elections got over, resigned from the services, joined the Congress Chief Minister as his secretary. Now that is not the past. This happened just now, less than a couple of months ago. So while we are discussing malpractices and you don't want to discuss the likes of MS Gill or Naveen Chawla, we cannot rule out people like Kelkar, and Congress needs to answer to that.
The question or the comment that you have made, I think, is a perfectly justified comment. Many things are done and are being done now in governments across the board, across the political divide, etc., which may not be perfect and acceptable if you have an open discussion. And it may be well possible that a decision that's taken should have been avoided. I mean, you can be more careful, etc. But would it lead to a conclusion that somehow the elections were not fair because somebody who did a fair election was then chosen to be in the secretariat? It's a question on which people can have different opinions. Undoubtedly, you can have a very strong opinion, but it doesn't justify going back to Mr. Chawla. That's all. And that's the point my friend had made, that it doesn't justify going back to Mr. Chawla. And if we want to start discussing Mr. Chawla, there'll be different aspects of his professional life, etc., that we could discuss. And it's in the Indian tradition, the good Indian tradition, that you don't discuss people who are not there to answer those questions.
Yeah, I think one can state public facts without being personal about somebody who's no longer there to answer the question. We discuss Mahatma Gandhi, Ambedkar all the time. They're not here to answer whether their criticism or lack of it. Look, the only point I as a scientist was trying to make, and I'm glad this has led to this discussion, is the following. Of course, you cannot have an excuse for the wrongdoings of the present, and the excuse being, oh, this also happened in the past. Absolutely not. And I've spent my entire life trying to dig out what wrong is happening currently with the current dispensations and telling them, do not say कि अरे पहले भी तो corruption होती थी तो अब हो रही है, क्या problem है? पहले बोफुर्ज हुई थी अब ये हो रहा है, नहीं. But as I said, a scientist would say things that this is not happening for the first time. So the objection comes is when you portray that in the current dispensation, आजकल देखिए कैसे CEC elect हो रहे हैं, आजकल देखिए डेमोक्रेसी चली गई है, आजकल मत बोलिए, ये बोलिए कि आज गलत हो रहा है। ट्रेजेडी इस देश की ये है कि ये इंडिपेंडेंट इंडिया से गलत होता है, then people would trust you, because now when you caught out, when you caught, then you are saying, oh, of course, past doesn't matter. I know past doesn't matter because the people booted out people who were doing wrongs and selected people who promised they would set those wrong things right. They haven't done it, so they have to be criticized. But at least the people know the wrongs that were done before. So just be honest and say, yes, wrongs were done. It doesn't matter whether Mr. Chawla was working under somebody. Yes, maybe that person also was corrupt. But I can equally say that person is not here to answer for himself. That's not the point. If his corruption was made public, then it must be discussed. But the fact is we are discussing Mr. Naveen Chawla and his selection and election as the Chief Election Commissioner after being indicted by the Shah Commission. How different or better was that than the present selection of the GEC, which is at least done by the committee, although I am not in favor of how it is done. That's all I'm saying. You know, there should be more journalism in science, but more important than that, there should be more science in journalism, objectivity and prior art. That's all.
Thank you so much, everyone. Considering the 3 minutes have elapsed now, we'll be moving on to the next speaker.
Thank you so much for all the valuable insights. Our next speaker for the proposition is a lawyer and the national spokesperson for the Bharatiya Janata Party. As one of the party's leading public voices, she has consistently represented its position on some of the most consequential political and constitutional debates in the country. Please welcome Ms. Charu Pragya.
Thank you very much. And let me first begin by praising the Delhi Union, and don't add that to my time. I'm incredibly proud of this group of young people who have started something through just sheer conversation that they would have at the end of the day with each other. And look what it has become today. So I'm incredibly proud of each and every one of you. Thank you for making me a part of this August gathering today. So I'm for the motion, and I'm going to stick to my motion, unlike my colleague here. And I was trying to tell him that, Anandji, you're supposed to be a team player. You've gone rogue. But, you know, we're discussing free and fair elections. We definitely have free elections, that is for sure. And today, nobody can dispute the fact that our elections are free. But you know, up till a couple of decades ago, even that was not a guarantee. Elections were not free. There were instances where entire villages were stopped from voting. There were instances where bandits would run off with the ballot box and it could be thrown in the river or hidden away somewhere. That was not free elections. And as for fair elections, I asked myself some questions, and I'm going to ask you the same questions and you can help me. The first test of fair elections is, can anyone contest these elections? Anyone can contest. We have a chaiwala who's become the prime minister. We have a tribal president today. We have regional parties, small regional parties which have been governing powerful states. We have a political party which was just born and won an election in Tamil Nadu. Every single major ideology in our country has won somewhere or the other. And this political competition shows us that anyone can contest and our elections are free and fair. My second question to you is, can a government lose? Most definitely governments can lose. AAP lost Delhi. They thought they were invincible. In fact, their leader Kejriwal used to go around saying that Bhagwan bhi aake Aam Aadmi Party ko Delhi se nikal nahi sakta, mujhko hara nahi sakta. BJP lost Karnataka. BJP was in power and it was a powerful party in power. DMK lost Tamil Nadu. And most recently, in West Bengal, TMC lost again, and that was also a very strong government, and it had been in power for really long. So, for the second question, can governments lose? Yes, governments lose, and they have lost multiple times. In fact, at a point sometime last month, our Home Minister had stated on the floor of the House that if BJP has won 44 elections since 2014, the opposition has won 30. If there was something wrong with the election process, then these 30 also wouldn't have gone to the opposition. Our responsibility is to do our job. Our responsibility is not to make the opposition better at their job. The third question I'm asking today is that in our country, does power change hands peacefully? We've seen instances from other countries that military has to be called in, tanks are roaming around. Does that happen in our country? No. People lose elections, government go out of power, the change of power happens in a very peaceful way, except the drama that happened, the tantrums that were thrown in West Bengal this time. But I'm going to take that with a pinch of salt, जहाँ पर एक मुख्यमंत्री खड़ी हुई और उन्होंने कहा, भाई मैं तो आज भी मुख्यमंत्री हूँ, आपके चुनाव का जो भी नतीजा आया हो, मुझे फर्क नहीं पड़ता. The fourth question I'm asking is, can citizens punish a government if they are unhappy about something? And many a times we have seen this happen. I'll give you examples. इमरजेंसी के बाद कांग्रेस पार्टी चुनाव हार गई थी, जनता पार्टी की सरकार बनी थी. क्यों? क्योंकि जनता नाराज थी. पनिशमेंट दिया, जनता ने हटा दिया. टीएमसी की सरकार पश्चिम बंगाल से चली गई क्योंकि the kind of atrocities that were being melted out over the last decade, and especially in the last few years, were there for everybody to see. With naked eyes, anybody sitting in any part of the world could make out things are terribly, horribly wrong. What did the people of the state do? They came out, they punished the government. वो सरकार हार गई. तो मैं आपको ऐसे बहुत सारे उदाहरण दे सकती हूँ. But if we put these 4 questions together and we answer them all and we look at it collectively, elections are absolutely free, absolutely fair, and if there is some reform that needs to be done, हमारे courts are stepping in and ensuring that is happening. I'll give you 2 very recent examples. कुछ समय पहले elections के खिलाफ in 2019 21 राजनीतिक दल सुप्रीम कोर्ट गए. 19 opposition political parties moved the Supreme Court against the election process, against EVMs in our country. The Supreme Court heard the entire matter. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने एक रूलिंग दी जहां पर ये कहा गया कि ईवीएम्स अपना काम ठीक कर रहे हैं, लेकिन दी ऑपोजिशन डिडंट स्टॉप देयर. वो ईवीएम के बाद वीवीपैट पर है. वहां पर कोर्ट को लगा कि नहीं, थोड़ा रिफॉर्म करा जा सकता है, तो एक वीवीपैट, एक असेंबली का चेक होने के बजाय दे मेड इट इनटू 5. Most recently, when the SIR process was going on, there were 11 documents that any citizen could give to verify their voting rights. लेकिन जब सबने बोला आधार को भी उसमें include करना चाहिए, the court agreed. आधार was added. So, court, laws, our process, our democratic process, it's living, it's breathing, it's alive, it evolves. And that is an indicator that elections are free and fair in our country. सी बड़ा आसान है इंस्टीट्यूशंस के ऊपर अटैक करना. बड़ा आसान है यहाँ पर आकर बैठना और कह देना कि सीईसी कॉम्प्रोमाइज थे, इलेक्शन कमीशन अपना काम नहीं कर रही है. पहले कभी ईवीएम्स में प्रॉब्लम थी, फिर वीवीपैट में प्रॉब्लम हो गई, फिर इलेक्टोरल लिस्ट में प्रॉब्लम हो गई, फिर एसआईआर के प्रोसेस में प्रॉब्लम हो गई. लेकिन एलिगेशंस के बाद एविडेंस भी तो आना चाहिए ना. एविडेंस आया कहीं से? एटम बॉम्ब सबने सुना, इतना ज्यादा मैंने एटम बॉम्ब सुना कि मैं तो एक्चुअली इंतजार कर रही थी मुझे भी पता चले, मी एज अ कंसर्न्ड सिटीजन ऑफ इंडिया, मुझे भी पता चले ये कैसा एटम बॉम्ब है, कौन सा एटम बॉम्ब है जो राहुल गांधी हम सबके ऊपर डालने वाले हैं. डिड द एटम बॉम्ब एक्चुअली कम? डिड एनीबडी गेट एनी काइंड ऑफ एविडेंस to malpractices that are happening in voter revision, in electoral rolls? Absolutely none. And when he was told to put his name where his mouth was shooting off, he refused to do that. He did not sign an affidavit. कोई ऐसा क्यों करेगा भाई? अगर आप किसी चीज में विश्वास करते हो, मुझे अगर आज यहाँ खड़े होके एक सिंपल सी पुलिस कंप्लेंट भी करनी है ना, तो मेरा लोकल थाने वाले जो बैठे होंगे वो मुझको बोलेंगे कि आप चिट्ठी पे लिख के दे दो जी, नीचे अपना नाम पता लिख देना. अगर एक छोटी सी चीज के लिए मुझे ये करना पड़ता है, एक बिजली के बिल की कंप्लेंट के लिए मुझे ये करना पड़ता है, इतना बड़ा फ्रॉड जब आप एलिज करते हो, आप एटम बॉम्ब की बात करते हो, why did you refuse to sign your name on that piece of paper? Why did you refuse to sign that affidavit? And I'm going to ask this again and again. आप वोट चोरी की बात कर रहे थे, जितने पकड़े गए allegations वो तो सब आपकी पार्टी और आपके स्टेट को फेवर करने वाले निकल कर आए. So these questions the citizens should be raising, asking, because I remember a time I was in 10th standard. मैं 10वीं में थी और इलेक्शन की मेरी पहली मेमोरी तभी की है. स्कूल में तब सिविक्स पढ़ते थे और बड़ा इंटरेस्ट होता था कि चुनाव हो रहे हैं. जनरल इलेक्शंस हुए थे 98 में, एंड 98 के जनरल इलेक्शंस के बाद सब एलिगेशंस किस प्रकार के आए थे? बैलेट बॉक्स चोरी हो गया. नियरली 5000 बूथ्स पे रीपोल ऑर्डर हुआ था केवल बिहार में. बाकी के देश की मैं बात नहीं कर रही, मैं केवल बिहार की बात कर रही हूँ. वो मेमोरी हमारी आज भी है. तो भाई वहां से आकर हम आज आ गए हैं. अगर बिहार में आपको प्रॉब्लम लगी तो आपने कितने फॉर्म्स जाकर सबमिट करे alleging some kind of an issue with the election process? None. There were no legal ऑन पेपर ऑब्जेक्शंस रेज. ऐसे बैठ के शोर मचाना तो बड़ा आसान है कि भाई हम चुनाव जीत जाते अगर मैल प्रैक्टिसेस नहीं होती. सो मैल प्रैक्टिसेस यूज्ड टू बी दैट. मैल प्रैक्टिस वाज व्हेन 35,000 पंचायत में किसी और का नॉमिनेशन नहीं भरने दिया गया पश्चिम बंगाल में इन 2023 इलेक्शंस. डू यू रिमेंबर दैट टाइम? 2023 में पंचायत के पोल्स हुए थे पश्चिम बंगाल में. 35,000 जगहों पे किसी और को नॉमिनेशन नहीं भरने दिया था. इसको कहते हैं हम लोग मैल प्रैक्टिस. सो व्हेन वी आर बैटलिंग दीज काइंड ऑफ मैल प्रैक्टिसेस, वी हैव टू रिमेंबर दैट द लार्जेस्ट क्रिटिक्स ऑफ इंडियाज इलेक्टोरल प्रोसेस टुडे आर द बिगेस्ट परपेट्रेटर्स ऑफ इलेक्टोरल मैल प्रैक्टिसेस. बिकॉज जब आप पुरानी बात करेंगे वो आपको बोलेंगे इतिहास में नहीं जाना. इतिहास छोड़ के जब हम वर्तमान में आज के केरल के रतन केलकर की बात करेंगे, वहां के सीईओ की बात करेंगे, उनको वो भी डिस्कस नहीं करना. So I think we need to look at free and fair elections from a prism of honesty, realizing that reforms are a living, evolving thing and India is constantly working at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charuji, for your remarks. Joining us now is the spokesperson for the Samajwadi Party, here to bring the opposition's on-the-ground perspective on how India's elections actually play out. Representing one of the country's principal opposition parties, please welcome Rajkumar Bhati.
दिल्ली यूनियन भाई शिवोम और उनकी पूरी टीम को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कि इतने महत्वपूर्ण का विषय पर इतना शानदार आपने कार्यक्रम आयोजित किया. जो मैं शुरू यहाँ से करता हूँ कि दिल्ली हमारा दुनिया के सबसे प्रदूषित शहरों में गिना जाने लगा है और अक्टूबर, नवंबर, दिसंबर में दिल्ली की हवा बहुत ज़्यादा ख़राब हो जाती है. प्रदूषण का स्तर बहुत बढ़ जाता है. उसके लिए जो जिम्मेदार लोग हैं, जो उसे संभाल सकते हैं, अगर उनसे हम सवाल करें और कहें कि दिल्ली की हवा तो बहुत ज़्यादा ख़राब है जी, इसे ठीक करो, और वो हमें जवाब देने लगे कि अगर इतनी ख़राब है तो सांस क्यों ले रहे हो हमारी दिल्ली में, तो मैं समझता हूँ ये जवाब ठीक नहीं है. ऐसे ही जवाब कुछ हमारे साथियों की तरफ से आए कि जब ईवीएम ख़राब है, जब इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड सिस्टम ख़राब है, तो क्यों चुनाव में हिस्सा लेते हो, चुनाव को बहिष्कार करो. नहीं, हमें चुनाव भी लड़ना चाहिए और हमें सिस्टम को सुधारने का प्रयास भी करते रहना चाहिए. ये कुछ गलत नहीं है. और लोकतंत्र में इस तरह की चर्चाएं, इस तरह के कार्यक्रम लोकतंत्र को मजबूत करते हैं. इससे ना तो घबराना चाहिए ना इसका विरोध करना चाहिए. जब पहली सरकारें थी, पहले नेता थे, वो भी धांधली कर रहे थे, वो भी गड़बड़ी कर रहे थे, तो उस समय भी इस दिल्ली में ऐसी चर्चाएं होती होंगी, ऐसा तो नहीं है कि नहीं होती होंगी. और लेकिन आज आपकी जिम्मेदारी है, तो आज आप सही सवाल पूछा जाएगा. तो आज चर्चा करने पे आप इतिहास क्यों याद दिला रहे हो कि तब तो ये होता था, तब तो वो होता था. और मैं तो पूरी ईमानदारी से स्वीकार करना चाहता हूं कि किसी पार्टी की सरकार हो, सरकारें थोड़ा बहुत सरकारी मशीनरी का दुरुपयोग करती ही हैं. लेकिन चारू जी माफ करें, बीजेपी की सरकारें कुछ ज्यादा दुस्साहस के साथ करती हैं. पहली कुछ डर के करती थी, कुछ शर्मा के करती थी, और कभी शुरू के वक्ता नहीं कहा, आप बोली थी शुरू में, तो मैम ने कहा कि हम दुनिया का सबसे बड़ी डेमोक्रेसी हैं. सबसे बड़ी डेमोक्रेसी के साथ साथ हम सबसे महान डेमोक्रेसी भी होते तो हमें और ज़्यादा गर्व होता. सबसे बड़ा लोकतंत्र तो हम इसलिए हैं कि हमारी आबादी सबसे ज़्यादा दुनिया में, लेकिन हम सिस्टम को इतना शानदार बना पाएँ कि दुनिया हमसे सीखे कि लोकतंत्र ऐसे चलता है, चुनाव ऐसे होते हैं, तो हमें और ज़्यादा गर्व होगा. उसमें हमें आलोचना को स्वीकार करना चाहिए, आलोचना सुनने की आदत होनी चाहिए. आलोचना से, प्रश्नों से ही रास्ते निकलते हैं. मैं कुछ घटनाएं आपके सामने रखना चाहता हूं, बहुत संक्षेप में. चंडीगढ़ नगर निगम चुनाव में चुनाव अधिकारी की वीडियो आप सबके दिमाग में आ गई होगी एकदम. वो ऑन कैमरा बैलेट पेपर में छेड़छाड़ करते हुए पकड़े गए, एक प्रत्याशी के पक्ष में वोट कैंसिल करते पकड़े गए, और चुनाव आयोग ने मान के नहीं दिया. खूब शिकायत हुई, बाद में सुप्रीम कोर्ट गया केस. सुप्रीम कोर्ट के आदेश के बाद ये माना कि हाँ, चुनाव में धांधली हुई है. एक और घटना मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूं. उत्तर प्रदेश में जब 2017 में चुनाव घोषित हुए तो समाजवादी पार्टी की सरकार थी। समाजवादी पार्टी की सरकार ने स्मार्टफोन योजना निकाली और उसके रजिस्ट्रेशन शुरू कर दिए। चुनाव आयोग ने उस पर रोक लगा दी कि अब चुनाव घोषित हो गए हैं, अब स्मार्टफोन योजना के रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं होंगे। लेकिन बिहार में जब इस बार 10-10 हजार रुपए खाते में डालने शुरू किए सरकार ने, तो चुनाव आयोग से सारे विपक्षी दल शिकायत करते रहे। चुनाव आयोग ने रोक नहीं लगाई और मतदान के दौरान भी कैश ट्रांसफर हुआ और बहुत से ऐसे अकाउंट्स में कैश ट्रांसफर हुआ जो उस योजना में आते भी नहीं थे। बाद में सरकार ने माना कि गलत अकाउंट्स में कैश ट्रांसफर हुए हैं, लेकिन अब चला गया तो चला गया, हम वापस नहीं लेंगे, वो ठीक नहीं है किसी से पैसा वापस लेना। यही सरकार का जवाब था। एक और बताना चाहता हूं आपको, उत्तर प्रदेश में 9 सीटों पर उपचुनाव हुए, विधानसभा के उपचुनाव। समाजवादी पार्टी ने मुख्य चुनाव अधिकारी के पास जाकर लखनऊ में शिकायत की कि उपचुनाव के दौरान पुलिस जगह जगह आईडी चेक करने के नाम पर मतदाताओं को वापस भगा देती है और कुछ वर्ग विशेष के मतदाताओं को बूथों तक नहीं जाने देती है। बाकायदा चुनाव अधिकारी ने पत्र जारी किया कि पुलिस को आईडी चेक करने का कोई अधिकार नहीं है और ये आईडी चेक नहीं करेंगे। इसके बावजूद उपचुनाव के दौरान जगह जगह इस दृश्य देखे गए कि पुलिस खड़े होकर आईडी चेक कर रही थी। उसके तमाम वीडियो सोशल मीडिया पे और मीडिया पे मौजूद हैं। और मीरापुर में तो एक सब इंस्पेक्टर ने 2 महिलाओं के ऊपर पिस्टल तान दी थी कि आप आगे नहीं जा सकती। वो कह रही थी हम वोट डालने जा रहे हैं। उसके बाद वो वीडियो के तमाम तथ्य होने के, सबूत होने के बाद भी चुनाव आयोग ने किसी एक अधिकारी के खिलाफ कोई कार्रवाई नहीं की, न उन्हें सस्पेंड किया, न उनके खिलाफ कोई मुकदमे कायम हुए। एक और हमने शिकायत की थी 2022 के चुनाव के बाद, समाजवादी पार्टी ने शिकायत की थी कि जब फाइनल वोटर लिस्ट दिखाई गई थी उसमें मतदाताओं के नाम थे, लेकिन जो वोटर लिस्ट बूथ पर आई उसमें नाम कटे हुए थे और खास तौर से अल्पसंख्यक समुदाय के और ओबीसी समुदाय के वोट कटे हुए थे। तो चुनाव आयोग ने कहा कि हमें वो दीजिए, सबूत दीजिए। 18,000 शपथ पत्र दिए जिसमें मतदाता ये कह रहा है कि मेरा फाइनल सूची में नाम था, लेकिन जो बूथ पे सूची आई थी उसमें मेरा नाम नहीं था। चुनाव आयोग ने उसके बाद कोई कार्रवाई नहीं की। ये तथ्य मैंने इसलिए रखे हैं। पश्चिम बंगाल में, बिहार और पश्चिम बंगाल में एसआईआर की प्रक्रिया तब शुरू की गई जब चुनाव सिर पे थे। एसआईआर की प्रक्रिया चुनाव के समय नहीं करनी चाहिए थी। और पश्चिम बंगाल में 27 लाख वे वोटर जिनके नाम वोटर लिस्ट में थे, उनके आगे डी लिख के, डाउटफुल वोटर लिख के उन्हें वोट नहीं डालने दिया गया। जबकि चुनाव आचार संहिता ये कहती है, मतदान की आचार संहिता ये कहती है कि भारत का हर नागरिक जिसकी आयु 18 वर्ष हो जाए उसका वोट होना चाहिए वोटर लिस्ट में, और जिसका नाम वोटर लिस्ट में है उसे वोट डालने से न रोका जाए। लेकिन 27 लाख लोगों को वोट नहीं डालने दिया गया। तो क्या इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड का भी जिक्र हुआ? इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड जब शुरू किया गया तो सारे विपक्षी पार्टियों ने विरोध किया। चुनाव आयोग ने उस पर कोई सुनवाई नहीं की। वो इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड सिस्टम भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट से जाके रिजेक्ट हुआ। तो क्या ये उदाहरण पर्याप्त नहीं है ये बताने के लिए या ये समझने के लिए कि हमारा चुनाव आयोग इन दिनों निष्पक्ष काम नहीं कर रहा है और चुनाव निष्पक्ष नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, बैलेंस नहीं है, फ्री एंड फेयर नहीं है? दूसरे, अभी चारू जी कह रही थी कि हर किसी को वोट डालने का अधिकार, चुनाव लड़ने का अधिकार है, कोई भी चुनाव लड़ सकता है। ये कहने में तो बहुत अच्छा लगा। हर किसी को तो हवाई जहाज में यात्रा करने का भी अधिकार है, लेकिन क्या इस देश का हर नागरिक कर सकता है हवाई जहाज में यात्रा? जो 80-85 करोड़ 90 करोड़ के करीब लोग जिनकी आमदनी 20 रुपये रोजाना है, या जो 5 किलो राशन के लिए हर महीने लाइन में लगते हैं, वो सोच भी सकते हैं हवाई जहाज में जाने की? चुनाव में लोकसभा की खर्च सीमा जो है 95 लाख और विधानसभा की 40 लाख है। कितने इस देश के नागरिक हैं जो 95 लाख रुपए खर्च कर सकते हैं चुनाव में? तो ये भी एक बड़ा कारण है। इसके लिए कोई मैं किसी पार्टी को जिम्मेदार नहीं ठहरा रहा, या मैं पार्टी पर कटाक्ष नहीं कर रहा। हम सब जिम्मेदार हैं, सारी पार्टियां जिम्मेदार हैं। मैंने 2 सुझाव बार बार रखे हैं जब भी इस तरह के कार्यक्रम हुए हैं। वो दोनों बात कह के मैं अपनी बात समाप्त करूंगा कि अगर देश में सच्चा लोकतंत्र कायम करना है तो चुनाव आयोग को 2 कदम तुरंत उठाने चाहिए। और हेगड़े जी और सलमान खुर्शीद साहब और मैडम आनंद जी बैठी हैं, ये ऊपर बात करते रहते हैं, तो मेरा सुझाव ऊपर तक भी पहुंचा दें। हम लोग तो सड़क के ही आदमी हैं। तो मेरे 2 सुझाव हैं कि चुनाव आयोग को 2 काम तुरंत करने चाहिए। एक तो सभी राजनीतिक दलों में आंतरिक लोकतंत्र हो, इसकी व्यवस्था चुनाव आयोग करे। जिस तरह चुनाव आयोग वोटर लिस्ट से देश के चुनाव कराता है, इसी तरह पार्टियां अपने कार्यकर्ताओं की सूची चुनाव आयोग को देते हैं और चुनाव आयोग उनका इलेक्शन करा के जिलाध्यक्ष कौन बनेगा, प्रदेश अध्यक्ष कौन बनेगा और चुनाव कौन लड़ेगा, ये काम कार्यकर्ता तय करें, ना कि हाईकमान तय करें। ये जो हाईकमान, देखिए एक बात ईमानदारी से कह दूं, मेरी पार्टी में टिकट के लिए कोई पैसा नहीं लिया जाता, ईमानदारी की बात है। लेकिन
कहीं तो रुक जाइए, ये तो
लेकिन कई पार्टियों में हाई कमान सूटकेस लेके बैठते हैं और खुलेआम टिकट बिकते हैं।
बट भाटी जी, अखिलेश जी का क्या होगा? उनको आप हाईकमान नहीं कुछ और बोलते होगे।
बेईमानी वहीं से शुरू हो जाती है।
पुकारते हैं।
नंबर 1। दूसरी व्यवस्था ये करनी चाहिए कि चुनाव 0 खर्च पे हो, चुनाव में 1 रुपया भी खर्च ना हो, उसका सिस्टम बनाए। 4 दिन का मतलब उसका प्रचार का टाइम होना चाहिए, कैंडिडेट 1 रुपया खर्च नहीं करेगा। प्रशासन 4 जगह सभा कराए विधानसभा में, सारे प्रत्याशी उस मंच पे बैठा दिए जाएं, अपनी अपनी बात कहें, मतदाता को जिसकी बात पसंद आए मतदाता उसे वोट दे दे। अगर ये 2 चीज लागू हो जाएं तो देश में लोकतंत्र मजबूत होगा। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
Thank you so much, Mr. Rajkumar Bhatti and Mrs. Charu Pragya, for those speeches. Considering the nature of those 2 very entertaining speeches, we'll be having another 3-minute panel discussion. So I think we can begin now, and after that we'll continue with the last speaker.
I have one comment here.
Yes.
भाटी जी, आप कहते हैं कि आप सड़क वाले हैं। देखिए, सड़क वाले यहाँ तक पहुँच गए जहाँ आप हमें सिखा रहे हैं क्या होना चाहिए, और जायज सिखा रहे हैं, गलत नहीं है, लेकिन आप यहाँ पहुँच गए। चाय वाला प्रधानमंत्री बन गया। इलेक्शन में पैसे नहीं खर्च होने चाहिए। आपको लगता है कि किसी भी डेमोक्रेसी में ऐसा हो सकता है कि इलेक्शन में पैसे नहीं खर्च होने चाहिए, या खर्च नहीं होते, या आपने खर्च नहीं किया? आपने टिकट के लिए दिए नहीं दिए वो अलग बात है, मतलब बट एटलीस्ट इलेक्शन के लिए तो पैसा खर्च हुआ है, ये तो शायद आप मान के चलेंगे। तो ये अब कहाँ की कौन सी कोई यूटोपियन वर्ल्ड की बात कर रहे हैं? अब एक रियल लाइफ वर्ल्ड की बात करिए, उसमें इंप्रूवमेंट हो, ये तो सब मान के चल रहे हैं। कोई ये नहीं कह रहा कि हमारा सिस्टम परफेक्ट है, पर अच्छा है, डिलीवर करता है, जो लोग चाहते हैं वो होता है। यही फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शंस का एक मुद्दा आपके सामने। गलतियां तो सब लोग करते हैं, आपने भी की, हमने भी की, आपकी पार्टी ने भी की।
नहीं, जो आपने कहा कि क्या ये संभव है, मैं पूरे आत्मविश्वास के साथ कह रहा हूं कि ये संभव है, और अगर इसे हम नहीं कर पाएंगे तो सही लोग चुन के आएंगे ही नहीं। चुनाव 0 खर्च पे होना चाहिए, प्रत्याशी का कोई पैसा खर्च नहीं होना चाहिए।
नहीं, जो बाटी जी कह रहे हैं वो सोचने लायक है। स्टेट फंडिंग ऑफ इलेक्शंस कई डेमोक्रेसीज में होता है, और हाँ, बाटी जी ने ये भी सही कहा है कि इंटरनल डेमोक्रेसी हर पार्टी में होनी चाहिए, वो होता नहीं है। अगर आप ब्रिटेन देखिए तो जो कैंडिडेट सिलेक्शन होता है वो लोकल पार्टी चेयरमैन, कंजर्वेटिव पार्टी के इस कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी के जो चेयरमैन होता है वो तय करता है। तो क्या हमारे देश में कभी ऐसा सुधार आएगा? हम तो उम्मीद बांध के ही तो बैठ सकते हैं। पर बाटी जी एक और चीज़ कह रहे थे कि वो सड़क के आदमी है। हम ये मानते हैं कि इस देश में अगर सुधार होना है तो पहले सड़क से होता है, सड़क से समाज में आता है, और समाज से सुप्रीम कोर्ट आता है। डॉक्टर राम मनोहर लोहिया ने कभी एक कहा था कि जब सड़कें खामोश होते हैं तो संसद आवारा हो जाता है। तो सड़कों को कभी खामोश नहीं रहना चाहिए।
देखिए, मैं 2 ही चीज़ें कहना चाहूँगा भाटी जी की। मैं बहुत ही इज्जत करता हूँ, लेकिन जिस पार्टी से वो आते हैं वहाँ तो आदमियों को पैसे देने की, खड़े होने के लिए छोड़िए, भैंसों को भी पैसे देने पड़ते हैं खड़े होने के लिए। पर इस चीज़ की मैं दाद दूंगा कि आम जनता जो हंसी जब भाटी जी ने वो कहा, मैं भाटी जी पे ये रिफ्लेक्शन नहीं है। भाटी जी को ये सोचना चाहिए कि जो उन्होंने कहा बॉस, वो नहीं हंसे, बहुत सीरियसली कहा, लेकिन जिस ठहाके मार मार के 1 मिनट तक जनता हंसी है वही आंसर है। और मैं उस पे बार बार आना चाहूंगा। सी इट्स टू इजी टू एक्सपोज द हिपोक्रेसी ऑफ पॉलिटिशियंस। उनको भी मजा आने लगा है अब कि अरे भाई तुमने मेरी हिपोक्रेसी डिस्क्लोज नहीं करी, आई एम वेरी ऑफेंडेड। कई लोगों ने कहा मुझे आके, कहूंगा टाइम तो दीजिए। अब यहाँ पे 4 पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव हैं। ये कहना बड़ा आसान है कि भाई हमें चेंज लाना है। अरे भाई पावर आपके हाथ में, 60 साल से आपके पास पावर थी चेंज लाने की। अब हमें कह रहे हो चेंज लाओ, हम तो 5-10 साल बाद वो चेंज नहीं, जो आपके हाथ में पावर है उसको एग्जिबिट करो और चेंज लाओ एंड शो व्हाट यू आर मेड ऑफ। तो मैं एक चैलेंज दे रहा हूं, 4 पार्टीज के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स यहां पे हैं। इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड्स, एनोनिमस इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड्स वर अ स्कैम प्रूवन बाय द सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑफ इंडिया। चलिए, जब आपने उससे पैसे लिए तब आपने वो नहीं माना, मॉरली तो मान लेना चाहिए था, लेकिन मान लीजिए टेक्निकली नहीं माना। अब वो क्या ये चेंज लाने के लिए वो सारे पैसे जो लिए क्या वो लौटाएंगे? हाँ या ना में बता दें। समाजवादी पार्टी ने लिए, कांग्रेस ने लिए, बीजेपी ने लिए और एनसीपी ने लिए। बोल दें कि हम जिन जिन से हमने वो पैसे लिए उन कंपनीज को, क्योंकि हमने ये धोखा किया है वोटर्स के साथ, बताया नहीं हमने किन किन कंपनी से पैसे लिए, हम वो उन सबको पैसे लौटाएंगे। ये चेंज चाहिए। क्या ये कर सकते हैं ये चेंज? नहीं। जनता से पूछने का काम बड़ा आसान है कि चेंज लाओ, ये करो, वो करो। पावर आपके हाथ में। शो अस व्हाट यू आर मेड ऑफ, प्रैक्टिस व्हाट यू प्रीच। सॉरी, भावनाओं में बह गया था।
आनंद रंगनाथन जी जबरन जिम्मेदारी को अपने ऊपर ओढ़ रहे हैं। आपकी कोई जिम्मेदारी नहीं है। आप एक साधारण नागरिक हैं देश के, ना तो आप सरकार हैं ना आप चुनाव आयोग हैं। आप क्यों जवाब दे रहे हैं उनकी तरफ से? जवाब उन्हें ही देने दें। और आप जो कह रहे हैं कि पैसे लौटा दो, सिस्टम बनाया था सरकार ने, जितने दिन सिस्टम बना के रखा वो सिस्टम चला। पहली बात तो आपको गलत जानकारी, समाजवादी पार्टी ने इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड में कोई पैसा नहीं लिया, आपकी जानकारी गलत है। दूसरे बात, अगर किसी ने लिया भी, कांग्रेस ने लिए थोड़े पैसे, 80% तो हाँ बहुत मामूली। मेरी हर बात पे हंसते क्यों? फिर वो कहते हैं कि इसलिए हंस रहे हैं कि तुम झूठ बोल रहे हो। देखिए, जब सिस्टम बना दिया मोदी जी ने, जब आपने अब केजरीवाल जी ने ऑड इवन सिस्टम लगाया था दिल्ली में, जो विरोध में थे वो भी तो ऑड इवन का पालन कर रहे थे। जब सरकार ने सिस्टम बना दिया तो मजबूरी है। लेकिन वो सिस्टम गलत था, ये आवाज भी तो लगातार उठ रही थी। और सर एक बात और बता दूं, जो यूपी की राजनीति के बारे में जानते हैं, मैंने ऐसे हल्के में नहीं कहा था, बहुत जिम्मेदारी के साथ कह रहा हूं, समाजवादी पार्टी में टिकट का पैसा नहीं लिया जाता। नहीं, ये हंसने की बात नहीं, गंभीरता से समझो।
भाटी जी,
रंगनाथन जी, आप हमको कह रहे हैं कि पैसे वापस करिए, तो आप हमको सड़क पे लाना चाहते हैं क्या?
I'll make a very quick comment. भाटी जी, आपका हम सब लोग बहुत आदर करते हैं और आदर के साथ ही हम हंस रहे हैं। लेकिन ना, क्योंकि इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड्स की बात होती है, सारे के सारे लोग खड़े हो जाते हैं सरकार की तरफ उंगली उठाकर। देखिए, सरकार में जो पार्टी है उसको इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड से जो पैसा मिला, वो जब सबके नाम ओपन करे गए, पब्लिक करे गए, तो इनके भी करे गए। लेकिन जितना पैसा पार्टी इन पावर को मिला, उससे थोड़ा ज्यादा ही पैसा पार्टीज इन ऑपोजिशन को मिला था। आप उसका हिसाब लगा के देख लीजिए।
80% was with the BJP. I'm sorry, 80% was with the BJP.
No, that's not true, sir.
Those figures
in value,
are
sir. In value, sir, I am giving you
80% of the money went to the BJP. After that came the TMC. So please. And who were the people who gave it? What were the contracts which they got? Mega constructions. How many contracts did they get? There is a much bigger story, but let's get back to today. How do we improve today?
Yes. We'll continue with the panel discussions after the next two speeches.
Let me make one more very quick point and then I will be done. Sir, if anybody wants to look at the details of electoral bonds, they have a smartphone in their hands. Pick it up, kindly Google. You will see comparatively the opposition has gotten more money. split amongst several political parties. The second thing is, and because राशन की बात होती है, कोई ये बात नहीं कहता कि जब राहुल गांधी अपना हाथ दिखाकर घूमते थे और कहते थे अब होगा न्याय, और घर बैठे लोगों को 72,000 rupees a year हम देंगे. Up to 20% households in our country, 72,000 rupees to 20% households in India. Do you even know what a mind-boggling number that is financially? And if India can bear that kind of a number, no. तो जब अपनी बारी आती है, आप किस भी प्रकार की बातें करते हैं, लेकिन यहाँ पर जो सरकार प्रॉमिस करती है वो डिलीवर करती है ना, तभी तो बार बार चुनकर वापस आती है. That was never promised, and we can have that debate independently if you like. Hang back after the debate.
Now we'll be continuing with the formal procedure with the speeches now.
Our next speaker is a psephologist and political analyst who spends his time doing what most of us don't, which is actually reading numbers behind how India votes. If anyone can tell us what's really happening on election day, it's him. Please welcome Sachin Kumar.
Thank you, organizers. First and foremost, it may seem very appealing, but one should always be extremely cautious of what we call perfection trap, right? When you give solutions and ideas which is too utopian to be implemented, then anything short of that will seem defective. So can there be democracies with its deficiencies? Yes. Democracy can never be perfect because it's always a collective exercise. So when we have to measure the success of any democracy, we should always be wary of a very mischievous ideal of something which is extremely utopian and is sold as perfection. So perfection trap is something. Can we have elections with defects? Yes. But does it mean that we start questioning the very legitimacy of those processes? The answer is no. So here the debate is not about electoral reforms. We all know there are a strong case of electoral reforms. The debate today is, can India trust its own election? And that's a very mischievous framing, because if you dig into it, if you do not trust your electoral system, elections, electoral procedures, electoral outcomes, it means you do not trust the democratic credential of India as a country. So that is why we have to take this debate quite seriously, this doubt quite seriously, and ask some questions. Suppose, for the sake of argument, we believe that elections in India have been rigged, and more lately, because though the debate is about in India, but in popular perception, people think that rise of the Modi phenomenon is an outcome of electoral rigging. If that is the case, let's take 3 elections: 2014, 2019, and 2024. What was the outcome? 2014, he was a PM with 282 seats. I'm talking about BJP's tally. 2019, slight improvement, 303 seats. 2024, 240 seats. So, are you saying that the electoral rigging in 2024 led to the loss of majority by the BJP? So, which by that logic, logically, 2014 election, the mandate is stronger. Was 2014 also rigged? If yes, by who? So therefore, this question of electoral rigging has to be dealt by the outcome also, not just by the optics, what you believe into. Now, suppose for the sake of argument, we also believe, we take it a case that elections are being rigged. So going by the government and Prime Minister Modi in particular, if he has to rig the election, then what would be the priorities? There could be 3 priorities. First, after abrogation of Article 370, the elections that happened after 2019 in Jammu and Kashmir, particularly in Kashmir Valley, BJP ideally should have seen itself winning. Did that happen? 2, after the construction of Ram Temple in Ayodhya, BJP should have won that seat with a whopping majority. They lost it. Right? And similarly, after 12 years, when first past the post system was inaugurated in India, 1952 onward, and Prime Minister Modi he surpassed the record of Nehru, and he is always beholden to Nehru's record. You know, certainly he would have wanted to break another record. When you think of Prime Minister Modi, what is the average number? Prime Minister Nehru? Around 350 seats. That would come. Think about Indira Gandhi, barring 1977 and 67. She is also around, the peak goes around 350 seats. Rajiv Gandhi, breaking the 400 barrier. So why, if elections are rigged, Prime Minister Modi, who is so much beholden to Gandhi family, will not try to surpass that record? So it seems that the electoral rigging is pathetic, very inefficient, doesn't make a very serious case. अगर इलेक्शन रिग करना है तो आप 240 सीट लेके क्यों रिग करेंगे? प्राइम मिनिस्टर की अपनी विक्ट्री मार्जिन 5 लाख कम हो गई 2019 से बनारस में. So these are some of the questions we need to ask, because there is a very strong optics and perceptions which peddles this impression that elections are rigged, and therefore democratic credential of India, which is a shining example in the canon of nations, is questionable. Where from this debate is originating? Has it originated in India? No, Indians have peddled this narrative. They have joined the debate. It never started. There has been cases, and there are seniors here, when in 1952, our first general election was about to be completed. The so-called experts of democracy, the Western intellectuals, and the newspapers like the Guardian, Manchester Guardian and others, they started warning Nehru that you are going to commit an absurd farce. Guardian wrote this by empowering millions of illiterate and poor with universal adult franchise, that is, voting rights. Penderel Moon, the famous Oxford scholar and international bureaucrat, British bureaucrat, said that Nehru would live to confess the absurdity that he has committed. So there were ones who raised doubts about the democratic credential of India, even at its genesis. And today, when you see the academia, Western academia, who initiated this debate of doubt, there is one French political scientist, I won't name him, you may know, when BJP started losing and there were many non-BJP parties who started coming to fore, he started writing and framing the argument, rise of the plebeians, deepening of democracy, silent India, silent revolution. And the moment in 2014, when BJP got the mandate, India, he started framing as an ethno-democracy, like Israel. That no caste, community, region divides have become an ethnic nation, which is hell-bent upon suppressing the minority. And another book came which is called Majoritarian State. So depending upon the outcome of the election, you frame the democratic and electoral integrity of India. That has been the pattern. There is another scholars from Ashoka in 2023 who wrote an article and said that closely contested elections witnessing some electoral discrepancy. He was ousted from Ashoka, of course, because there was no data. How do you know which seats are closely contested unless and until results are out? We do not know which seats will be one-sided and which would be closely contested. There is no fixed nature of the constituencies. But that debate, that article shifted the goalpost from EVM. Suddenly the charge became voter list discrepancy. And that is why you will see starting aspersions and insinuation on the institution of the state as completely compromised is basically questioning the democratic credential of the country. And this trope of a state being an agent of a class is a vulgar Marxist trope, which doesn't believe in democracy. And finally, just the last point, we have to see what has happened. The outcome today is, since 2014 onward, you see the top 3 posts of Republic. This is a tangible marker. You had a Dalit president, Ramnath Kovind, OBC vice president and OBC prime minister. Today you have a tribal president and vice president, prime minister hailing from the OBC community. This is the outcome of Indian democracy and electoral process. And yet you call India Brahmanical. That is framing, that is optics, not the outcome. The question here is that parties in general and BJP in particular, you win election by social engineering, economic engineering, not by electoral rigging. It's time for the opposition party and many one to introspect and to reflect and have some accountability where you are weak. Yes, there are cases of electoral reforms, as has been pointed out. No one opposes that. But electoral integrity being questioned should not be an euphemism of tarnishing the democratic credential of India. Thank you.
And closing today's debate is the spokesperson for the NCP SP and a Rhodes Scholar. At the intersection of politics, public policy, and scholarship, he represents a new generation of leaders shaping India's democratic conversation. Please welcome Anish Gawande.
हम थिएटर वाले हैं, बहुत बार कहा जाता है break a leg. I've gone ahead and done that. But as somebody told me very wisely, better a broken leg than a broken heart. So I'll start off by being a little astonished by the arguments that were made before me. We are told that there is no rigging because the government is not perfect at rigging elections. Now my only counter to that, sir, is that हम 12 साल से कहते आ रहे हैं कि सरकार बहुत कुछ कहती है, करके नहीं दिखा पाती. Just like they cannot govern, they cannot rig elections perfectly either. But I want to come to a more fundamental point here today. Right? The point here made was that perfection is not something we should aspire towards. Perfection is something we should be wary of. But this is a logic I want to counter very directly. 100 years ago, England's Lord Chief Justice Hewart said, "Justice must not only be done, but must manifestly and undoubtedly be seen to be done." Elections function in a very similar way. Elections should not just be free and fair. They should manifestly and undoubtedly be seen as free and fair by every single citizen of this country. And that today, unfortunately, is not an assumption I can make. Public trust is the bedrock of our democracy. And public trust is precisely what has been systematically eroded over the course of the last decade. And let me not pretend that this started in 2014. Even though I am a spokesperson of the opposition, I cannot forget 1957 Begusarai, the first time we had a record of booth capturing, which became an MSME industry for the next 30 years across many states of the country. Of course, I'm not forgetting 1972, when the entire opposition boycotted the assembly because of rigging of elections in Bengal. I am certainly not forgetting 12 June 1975, Allahabad High Court, producing a verdict against Indira Gandhi that led to the declaration of the emergency. But there was a difference between that time and today. At those moments, a manipulation of the election was acknowledged and solutions were found. When you had booth capturing, you got Section 58A and then the EVMs. When you had pliant authorities who became election commissioners, you had the government recognize its own folly and appoint people of unimpeachable integrity like T.N. Seshan to the office. When machines were doubted, VVPATs were introduced. What has changed today, unfortunately, is that the very desire to correct any flaws in our elections has gone away, and any questions about electoral integrity are met with immediate suspicion. So what do you see in front of you today instead, right? What you're seeing in front of you today is death by 1,000 cuts. 1,000 cuts that have systematically hollowed out the election process in this country, each more nefarious than the other. The first is the curious case of our electoral rolls. In 2026, You have electoral rolls that are provided to you by the Election Commission as hard copies. The electoral rolls of an entire state would be enough paper to fill up this speaker's room. In an age of ChatGPT and AI, this is equivalent to telling you when you buy a new phone that here's a printout of your old contact database. Please manually enter one by one the new names. Why? Why is there a willful sort of hiding of data? Who is afraid of transparency in the elections? Now, the second cut is this curious case of addition and deletion of voters. Now you see the addition of voters in Mahadevpura, more than 1 lakh voters are added. The EC itself admits that lakhs of bogus or duplicate sort of voter ID cards are roaming around in the system. How is that countered? Through SIRs and a revision process that sees 65 lakhs removed overnight in Bihar, 90 lakh voters being removed from the rolls in West Bengal before an election. And this has consequences. 31 constituencies in West Bengal where the margin of victory is lower than the number of deletions. One constituency, 862 vote margin, number of deletions, 5,500. Appeals pending for 4 years. The Supreme Court has the audacity to say today that you can wait until the next election. That is a shame on every single Indian citizen today. The third is the micro manipulation at the seat level. I'll tell you my own party's example. My own party, the NCP, had our name and our symbol stolen in 2023. We were allotted a new name and symbol in 2024, right before the elections. The symbol we were allotted was man blowing a tutari. We said, fine, we'll go to the elections with that symbol. What do we see during the elections? Candidates are allotted, independent candidates, a deceptively similar symbol, which is just the tutari without the man playing it. The irony? Many of those candidates have the same name as our candidates. And this is supposed to be a free and fair election. What are the consequences of that? In Satara, our candidate loses by 32,771 votes. How many votes does a deceptively similar symbol get? 37,062. This is an election that is being manipulated in front of our eyes. We go to the Chief Election Commissioner, I'm part of that meeting, and we're told we can't do anything about it. What happens in Dindori? More than 1 lakh votes go to that symbol. What happens in Madha and Bid? 48 to 54,000 votes go to that deceptively similar symbol. Thankfully, in those 3 constituencies, we managed to do more than what is required. A famous quote by a chief minister was that under the BJP, you have to assume that you have to get 10% more in every election because you have to account for 10% being vote chori. Now, let's imagine you survive all of these cuts, right? Is the mandate still safe? No, because the new mantra in Indian politics comes from my state, is pannas khoke ekdam okay. Now, in fact, the joke going around in Delhi is that the easiest way to become a minister in the BJP government is to be an opposition MP. Because that's the sort of fast track queue to getting into government. And because in many ways, if plan A fails, you go to plan EC. And if plan EC fails, you go to plan ED. So you know, I say this facetiously, but what do we do in these times, right? We ask questions. We demand accountability. But every time you ask a question, what is coming your way? You're called anti-national. Every time you question the Election Commission, you are called urban Nakshal. Speak about the Supreme Court and dare I say it, you're called a cockroach. And look at the irony. The same government that hits out at the opposition over the emergency, that commemorates Samvidhan Hatya Divas, wants to impose an undeclared emergency in the country. And perhaps there is a couplet by Muzaffar Warsi that is very apt here. कि औरों के ख्यालात की लेते हैं तलाशी, औरों के ख्यालात की लेते हैं तलाशी और अपने गरेबान में झांका नहीं जाता, और अपने गरेबान में झांका नहीं जाता. As I conclude, I want to look back to Mahatma Gandhi, whose aspiration in life, whose mission in life was to wipe every tear from every eye. The aspiration of our government today and the aspiration of our election commission must be and has to be to convince every single voter in India that elections are free and fair. That is precisely why we have a polling booth in the middle of the Himalayas to ensure that one voter can go and vote there. That's precisely why we've had a history of election commissioners who have stood for the country and not for the government. Because, I will repeat, our elections don't just need to be free and fair. They must be seen by every single citizen to be manifestly and undoubtedly free and fair. And until then, asking questions, demanding accountability is the most patriotic thing any Indian can do. Thank you very, very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Gawande. Your argument definitely didn't only stand on one foot. Now, there's a little fun segment we have. Last time we had tea, so to replace, we gave tea beforehand, just for the viewers over here, in case they don't know. To replace that, we have Mr. Manu Abhishek Bhardwaj, who's a comedian. He's going to perform a 5-minute skit on elections in India and in a nishpaksh way. And I hope you enjoy. The Delhi Union does not take any legal responsibility for anything he says. We have Mr. Sanjay Hegde and Ms. Pinky Anand standing here, and Mr. Salman Khurshid, the former law minister as well. Thank you so very much.
Hi, I think I'm going to be the least funniest comedian today after listening to Mr. Bhati, Mr. Hegde, and Mr. Anand Ranganathan, or as some people call him, the next
कॉम्प्लीमेंट दे रहे हो गाली दे रहे हो
अभी तो शुरू किया सर Disclaimer. I take sole responsibility of whatever I say on this stage today, and the Delhi Union shall not be held liable for my words. I am a lawyer myself, and I love to be held, but hopefully not in contempt of court. If you like my jokes, my name is Manu Abhishek. If you don't like my jokes and find them offensive, my name is Kunal Kamra. If you want to come on the stage and slap me to channel your inner Will Smith, I would strongly discourage that because I know karate, MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, Krav Maga, and a whole lot of other words. So beware. Good evening, everyone. My name is Manu Abhishek. No, not that one. And I will be your 5-minute entertainment for today. The topic at hand is, are elections free and fair in India? Well, I don't know about fair, but the elections are surely not free. Mr. definitely pay a lot for them. Unlike the Adivasi land which they get for only 1 rupee for some reason. Please note that this joke was very neutral and not targeted at a single political party because big conglomerates have always been funding the elections since time immemorial to gain control over a country's politics, regardless of the country or the party. Thank you. I had to make that joke neutral because I have been told to make neutral jokes, as you all saw, and not upset anybody on the panel. If I wish to not accidentally get hit by a truck while walking on the street, or worse, to be mentioned in Mr. Anand Ranganathan's next podcast called the Samosa Caucus. The Samosa Caucus is also what calls his political ideology. And talking about Mr. I will have to give up on my true principles today and ideologies today and be neutral in this debate, so I'll try my level best. So we have an amazing panel today and very senior members of the bar as well, so I will obviously not be roasting them if I want a career as a lawyer. But I think I can take my chances with Mr. Anish Gawande if he's game. May I? Okay. Mr. Anish Gawande's Instagram bio reads as writer, reader, listener, national spokesperson for NCP, co-founder Pink List India, director at Dara Shikoh Fellowship, and a Rhodes Scholar. He's the ultimate Sharma ji ka ladka. My dad once tried to compare me to Mr. Anish, but then my dad remembered that he's an old Indian brown uncle, so he's very homophobic. So he just stopped talking at that point. I praise the Lord every day that Mr. Anish Gawande is openly gay, so that he leaves some women for the rest of us underachieving ugly boys. I wish you all the best for your future endeavors. Break a leg, buddy. Oh, I see you already done that. I honestly do not think it is possible to rig elections in India. Elections in India, as Mr. Hegde said, are like the recent Argentina matches at the FIFA World Cup. It's all fair until you're winning, but as soon as you lose, the opposition starts saying it's all rigged. And any Ronaldo fans in the house? Go home like your idol did in the quarterfinals. Sue! और ये जोक्स मैंने पहले लिखे थे. वोट चोरी का मुझे नहीं पता, बट मेरे बहुत सारे जोक्स जरूर चोरी हो गए आज. Mr. Rahul Gandhi, accused the BJP government of vote theft last year. He had multiple claims, one of which was that 500 voters were registered at the same address, and it is physically impossible for these people to share the same household. My brother in Christ, आपने मुंबई के घरों का साइज देखा है? I can totally believe that धारावी के घर में 500 लोग रह सकते हैं. But in reality, there is only one house in Mumbai which can fit 500 people. We all know which house this is. Mr. Rahul Gandhi claimed that there were a lot of house number zeros in the voter list, and he found that very dubious, but the Election Commission cleared it up. The Election Commission later clarified that these house number zeros were named after the number of times the Congress government has won the election since 2014. Mr. Rahul Gandhi also claimed that a picture of a Brazilian woman was used with different names like Shilpa, Babli, Rupa, etc. to cast multiple votes. अरे भाई, जब गलगोटिया चाइनीज डॉगी इंडियन बना सकता है, जब नासा स्पेस से हर साल दिवाली की फोटो रिलीज कर सकती है, जब यूनेस्को जनगण मन को बेस्ट नेशनल एंथम दे सकता है, तो ब्राजीलियन मॉडल्स के इंडिया में वोट नहीं कर सकते क्या यार? राहुल जी, पहले आलू डालते थे तो सोना निकलता था, ब्राजीलियन मॉडल्स की फोटो डालते हो तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसीज निकलती है. The Chief Election Commissioner, when asked to show the video footage of polling booths to counter the claim of vote theft, claimed that it is not possible to show the videos as it will invade the privacies of the citizens, including our Mataएं, Bahu and Betiya. So instead, the government accidentally leaked the Aadhaar data of 800 million people eventually. On the dark web, that too. I'm a huge cinephile. I watch a lot of movies, and one of my favorite movie series is the Bond movie series. People have different favorite Bonds. Personally, I prefer Daniel Craig, maybe some recency bias. Some OGs prefer Sean Connery. I'm sure there must be some here. Some say that Pierce Brosnan was the best Bond, but the BJP government says that their favorite Bond is electoral bond. And before being discontinued, electoral bonds were basically the corporate equivalent of OnlyFans subscriptions for politicians. Okay, moving towards the end. As I said, I watch a lot of movies, and The Avengers is also one of my favorite series. In this movie, the villain Thanos deletes half of the population of the world with one snap of a finger. Coincidentally, life imitates art, and the ruling party also has a similar power, where they can remove as many voters with a snap of a finger. The Special Intensive Revision, or the SIR, or the downfall of her own party, as Ms. Mamta Banerjee likes to call it, is a superpower that the government has been using to eliminate ineligible voters. But to save the day, the Supreme Court finally stepped in to reassure anxious citizens, legally ruling, look, don't worry, being deleted from the voters list doesn't mean that you will lose your Indian citizenship. You can show any document to prove that you're an Indian citizen as long as it is not your Aadhaar card, voter ID, PAN card, or passport. The only thing that proves your true Indian citizenship is post-dated Dhurandhar 1 and 2 tickets both. To end this debate, I honestly don't know if the elections are fair and free. I really don't know. And neither do I support any particular political party. However, there is one party that I support, which is not actually a party but a movement, the Cockroach Janta Party. So it is my humble request. And plea to everybody present today, please try to join the protest and see for yourself. See for yourself what is happening there. Do not rely on Instagram narratives. See the ground reality. Jai Hind.
Well, there was no use moderating that script. Anyway, now we'll be moving on to an audience round, which means that last time we had a big issue. I was only picking people from the front, apparently. We're going to be moving from the back onwards. So we go one person from there, one person from here, one person there, one person here, one person there, one person here. Okay? And post-voting will also be collected. I hope you've made up your mind. I don't know how the discussion will go. Yes, the gentleman over there.
Namaskar, everyone. My question is to Anand sir and Charu ma'am, and get well soon, Anish. So, sir, there was a lot of example of Bihar given, like 5-6 examples, right? I'd like to quote our Pradhan Mantri ji. He said, "Marab sixer ke 6 goli chhati mein." This was said by him during the election rallies. So I know accountability is not his best thing, right? But where is the Election Commission of India? Where is their spine to correct him? He cannot say such casteist and discriminatory things for 132 million people of Bihar, that we always carry a katta around, we are shooting people around, right? How can he say that? And then the irony, the cherry on the cake, is that BJP selected Samrat Chaudhary, sir. Yes. Ma'am, you can check that. He said this. And the irony is that the BJP selected Samraj Chaudhary, who has 12 cases going on him, convicted in 2 cases. And then he was the son of Shakuni Chaudhary, who was in RJD. And let me tell everyone, Pradhan Mantri Modi ji said this to quote the Gunda Raj in Bihar, that this was the case before BJP and Nitish Kumar came, that Gunda Raj was prevalent. And now we see what is happening with in Bihar with the Tiwari murder case.
Got the question. Would anybody out of the 3 like to respond? Mr.
Thank you for your question. Of what I've understood it, I think you are trying to make the case which every sensible person should have made decades ago, is that every politician is cut from the same cloth, right? There is no distinction that I make between how corrupt a politician is in this party, how honest. Everyone is the same. So if you go by that dictum, then it should not be a problem of one leader or the other. For me, as I said, and there, if I can just extend a couple of points, because Bharti ji, जो मेरे बड़े भाई हैं, उनको ये पता नहीं लगता है कि हर जगह इंटरनेट नहीं आता है तो वो बोल देंगे और लोग समझ जाएंगे, यकीन कर लेंगे. इन्होंने क्या कहा था? इन्होंने कहा कि समाजवादी पार्टी कभी भी पैसे नहीं लेती टिकट के लिए. समाजवादी, अब मैंने वो चैट जीपीटी में किया, तो पहले तो इंटरनेट था, अब तो AI भी आ गया है, तो ये डबल धमाका होने वाला है इनके लिए. एक है सतीश प्रेमी, समाजवादी पार्टी के ही लीडर. उन्होंने ये एलेज किया कि समाजवादी पार्टी पैसे लेती है टिकट के. नंबर 2, अगर आप प्रेमी जी को छोड़ दें तो शिवपाल यादव, जो कि मुलायम सिंह यादव जी के अपने भाई, उन्होंने कहा कि 5, 15, 25 करोड़ लेती है समाजवादी पार्टी टिकट के. खैर एनीवे, वो दूसरी बात है. और ये वायर का आर्टिकल है, क्योंकि पंचजन्या का आर्टिकल तो भाटी जी बिलीव नहीं करेंगे कि समाजवादी पार्टी ने 14 करोड़ लिए थे इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड, एनोनिमस इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड से. और दूसरी बात, मैं अनीश जो कह दूं, जो मुझे लगता है फुट इन द माउथ हो गया, इसलिए शायद इंजरी हो गई है, कि जब ये कह रहे हैं कि भाई हमारे सिंबल के काफ़ी सिमिलर आ गए, यार वो इलेक्शन कमीशन की प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, हमारे देश के लोग ही इतने महान हैं. जब मैं वोट करने गया था, कितने तरह के झाड़ू थे. फूल झाड़ू था, एक आम आदमी पार्टी का तीली वाला झाड़ू था, प्लास्टिक का झाड़ू था, एक कभी कांग्रेस के लिए एक उल्टा हाथ होता है, सीधा हाथ होता है. दिस इज व्हाट दीज पार्टीज हैव बीन डूइंग फॉर एजेस. Now, obviously, you can say election commission should look into it, but to say that यहाँ पे भी उसको कटघरे में खड़ा करो problem. Look, as coming back to the question, politics is a cesspool. To paraphrase what Dr. Ambedkar said, who incidentally stood for elections and he lost deposits twice. Someone like Dr. Ambedkar could not be elected in this country. So you can imagine, what is the state of elections and politicians out here. We are not trying to say anything new. The politicians, in trying to say ye hona chahiye, wo hona chahiye, they're not trying to say anything new. What is the solution? I gave the solution. अब तो 5 political parties, अब तो समाजवादी पार्टी ने भी 14 करोड़ लिए हैं, 38 करोड़ एनसीपी ने लिए हैं. सबसे पहला solution है, भाई ये जो आपने काला पैसा लिया है, ये वापस कर दो एनोनिमस इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड से. हाँ कहलवा दो, सारे लोग सीधी सी बात है, मैं इनको वोट देना शुरू कर दूंगा.
Thank you so much. Just a reminder, please keep your question and answers concise, since we're running out of time.
Yes, I'll be very quick, but to answer your specific point which you raised on PM Modi, I don't know if you actually heard his speech at the rally. He was calling out the RJD for using songs like that at their rallies. It was the exact opposite of what you are trying to connotate here. So please do your research before you ask such questions. Yes, he called out the song, and he rightly did so. He opposed songs like that with those kind of words. Isn't he supposed to do that? A prime minister is supposed to keep quiet?
Okay, thank you so much.
Prime minister does keep quiet.
Okay.
You're confusing him with the previous one.
Over there, the one who's standing, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm a big fan of everyone in the panel, so great discussion. I have a question for the people who are against the motion that the elections are not fair. Fair, not fair, it's arguable, I can see. But is it fair to actually bring these issues in an international platform and discuss it in front of international community? A topic of such national importance to be raised in an international platform, is it fair according to you?
All the time, there are international observers for lots of elections all over the world. And yes, when there is the world staring at you, you cannot just brush your dirt under the carpet. So yes, we are a tradition where good thoughts come to us from every side. So what's wrong? I see nothing wrong. And what is the inarticulate major premise of your question is simply this: bahar badnami hogi. That is exactly the kind of thinking which prevents most people from speaking out, whether it is in the home or whether it is anywhere outside, in any system. I do believe that questions from wherever in the world always strengthen the process.
Thank you so much. Now we'll be taking a question from, yeah, there.
So I have a question specifically for Sajjan ji. Sajjan ji, आपने सारे points सब लोगों ने बहुत अच्छे से रखे, probably we all understood. पर मेरा question ये है कि whatever steps that the current government is bringing in, why does it happen that the timeline has to be an issue, even for the matter that whosoever might be supporting any side? So if SIR is brought, I think so, and people would also be agreeing to me that it was because they landed at 240, right? And now they are cleaning up the entire nation. Initially, NRC was also brought, then it was laid back कि भाई अभी इस पे काम नहीं करना है, etc. And now this is the backdoor entry for the same. Same way, delimitation also उसका एक time frame था. According to the constitution वो चला गया. Now they are not looking at, the next timeline. They're looking at the next timeline now. So why is it that the timeline has to be a question? If at all the elections are to be free, the timeline certainly raises a deep question.
See, that's a valid question because there are two aspects. One, be it delimitation, wherein you have to redraw the electoral map as per the latest census, or be it about the SIR, which is also as per the Election Commission. Both are constitutional mandate. Are they desirable? Yes, they are a must. Are they feasible? Herein comes the problem. The problem part, and one has to be critical if you find certain discrepancy in the actual process wherein some of the people who should have been in the voter list are excluded because of the discrepancies, right? Because of the timing, and they did not get enough time to appeal. So feasibility part is well taken, but even here, how long will you keep on delaying it? Last SIR revision, yeah, it was 22 years ago. Delimitation should have continued since 1971 onwards. You know when delimitation was brought to a freeze? When country was under emergency rule. And Mrs. Gandhi had a reason to punish those part of country that was completely invested in anti-emergency protest. Right? So we have to see the history. For 25 years, population will keep on changing, but no change in the seat. Why? Because you are safe in southern part. They did not punish you. In 77, Congress was not punished in the south. They swept Andhra and many other states. So we have to see. So feasibility. But here the question is, as I said, the perfection trap. Little nuance is needed to understand. A mammoth exercise, democratic exercise, when the first electoral roll was being prepared. Lakhs of women refused to give the name of their husband because as per the social milieu, it was a taboo. So, thanks God today we do not have such a naysayers, otherwise they would have said, look, what sort of a ghost are there in the electoral list? When your entire electoral journey was being questioned, that time India prepared its electoral list, conducted the free and fair elections with deficiencies, of course. We have to see our starting point and what sort of, when we see about the feasibility, linked to your question, People say it should also be seen as free and fair. How? Prime Minister, victory margin came down to 5 lakhs. What more do you expect? It cannot be your women fancy. So that is why, if it's a case of electoral reforms, none of us are opposed to it. Yeah. If it's about the electoral reforms, none of us are opposed to it. But here the debate is, do we believe our electoral system or not? Electoral process or not? Outcome or not? That's the question here. And that is why many criticism are coming about the feasibility part. But when you shift it to the desirability part, that SIR is not desirable, delimitation is not desirable, that means your intention is something mischievous, not a very valid, insightful citizenry's role. Thank you
so much, Mr. Kumar. I just have to reiterate one thing. I am very happy with you taking as much time. I don't know about the rest of the panelists. If anybody has to go, they can go by 8. Okay. That's my whole thing. And I want everyone to have their questions answered as well. So let's just, everybody
just one brief thing. As the sole South Indian on the out here. Okay. No, here. Okay, sorry.
I'm not a South Indian, I'm an Indian from the South.
I am a proud South Indian. And that is precisely the problem that we have with delimitation. It's a very touchy issue. And right now, my only point was that Mr. Sajjan Singh here did not tell you that it was Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee who brought in the 84th Amendment in 2002, which continued the freeze. There is a particular consensus that you cannot penalize the South, which has done a good job on population control. The tax revenue that we bring in is used up in the North in ways which really can bring about.
Okay, so I don't think there should be a question on North and South divide. This is a very unfair.
Okay. No, that is exactly the question.
No, even that is a propaganda, because the demographic transition south from 80-81 census until 41 has already doubled its population when North and West were stagnant. They started transitioning since 1961, precisely when South started. So you cannot have your turn 50 years ago, and when North and West started transitioning, Maharashtra and Gujarat included, you start only case of successful and atrocious family planning happened, and that happened during emergency. Karunanidhi fathered 6 children. They were no fans of family control. It's all self-propaganda.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar.
No, I'm going to bring this back to the point of why delimitation is required and why so much criticism again and again. Of course, it will be tabled in Parliament. But look at this. Every single MP in our country, if they meet 1,000 people a day from their constituency, it's going to take them over 7 years to get through their entire constituency. I think that itself should be a good reason to support delimitation instead of getting into nitty-gritties.
We'll have a debate on this also very soon, and then all of us can come together again. Okay, of course I will. Now, can we go? I'm sorry, this section has been covered, both sides. I'm going to go to the man in the front sitting there.
There is a question from a no voter to nota voter, Professor Anand. देखिए ऐसा है कि यहाँ पर हर टॉम डिक्की हैरी, बुरा नहीं मानिएगा, बहुत सारी चीज़ों के लिए हम एंट्रेंस एग्जाम करवाते हैं, लेकिन शासन चलाना है, देश चलाना है, प्रजातंत्र चलाना है. मेरा प्रश्न आपसे प्रिसाइजली इसलिए है कि आई कंसीडर यू वन ऑफ द पॉलिटिकली इनकरेक्ट वॉइस, नो नॉनसेंस वॉइस, एंड ऑफ कोर्स द सेनेस्ट वन.
Thank you so much.
ठीक है, नहीं सर, मेरा प्रश्न अभी आया नहीं है. मैं प्रश्न ये करना चाहता हूँ कि आपने कहा कि 75 साल के बाद भी हमें लज्जा नहीं आती कि हम अभी इन सब चीज़ों पर चर्चा कर रहे हैं, लेकिन 75 सालों में एक और बात पर हमें लज्जा नहीं आती कि हमने इस डेमोक्रेसी को लेकर के कुछ भी इनोवेशन नहीं किया, जो जैसे चला आ रहा है और हम बहुत ही, जिसे कहते हैं ना कि बहुत प्राइड के साथ कैरी ऑन कर रहे हैं. जैसे एंट्रेंस एग्जाम इंजीनियरिंग के लिए है, मेडिकल प्रोफेशन के लिए है, एक वोटर की क्वालिफिकेशन में सिर्फ एक ईयर को जोड़ देना, एक सिटीजनशिप को जोड़ देना। मैंने आखिरी बार, मैं पहली बार नहीं कह रहा हूँ, वो पहली बार भी था, लेकिन मैं पहली बार और आखिरी बार वोट मैंने दिया था 1989 में, और आज तक मैंने वोट नहीं दिया उसके बाद। क्योंकि मैं जब खड़ा हूँ तो मेरे आगे पीछे सब बिकने वाले भी अगर खड़े हैं तो मैं फिर वोटर कैसे हुआ? मेरे विजडम का क्या मतलब रह गया? तो मेरा प्रश्न है सर कि इस डेमोक्रेसी में जो इस तरह का इलनेस है कि एक वोटर का कोई क्वालिफिकेशन नहीं है, तो क्या क्वालिफिकेशन होना चाहिए? क्या कि सिर्फ 18 साल या भारत का सिटीजनशिप, कि कुछ और जैसे एंट्रेंस एग्जाम्स में होते हैं?
धन्यवाद, थैंक यू so much for your question, Dr. Ranganathan.
Thank you.
We would request the panelists to discuss it, and then those in the audience can discuss it later.
Okay. And just for reference, all those in the audience who have their questions and answers unquenched at the moment, we have this thing called Sunday sessions, which we do online and offline every 2 weeks, where it's literally just a town hall with an important figure. We have one with Dr. Karan Singh also coming up in 2 weeks, and next week we have Mr. Harjeev Singh of Gutenberg. Anyway, go ahead.
थैंक यू पहले तो इतने वार्म कॉम्प्लीमेंट्स देने का। देखिए, एग्जामिनेशन इसलिए वोटर्स का नहीं होता, अगर मान लो पेपर लीक कर जाए उसमें और प्रॉब्लम आ जाएगी। लेकिन जो आपने सवाल पूछा, मैं सीधे यही सवाल सबसे पहले पूछा गया था कि इंडिया को इलेक्शंस करने चाहिए 1952 में कि नहीं। हमारा लिटरेसी रेट सिर्फ 12.5% था। सबसे अच्छी डिसीजन थी वो कि हमने इलेक्शंस किए, क्योंकि देखिए इस दुनिया के और इंडिया के सबसे करप्ट लोग सबसे पढ़े लिखे होते हैं। ये पढ़ाई लिखाई, लिटरेसी हैज गॉट नथिंग टू डू विद हाउ मच यू वांट टू वर्क फॉर इंडिया और लव फॉर इंडिया। मैं आपको एक एग्जांपल दूंगा। इस देश की ग्रेटेस्ट पॉलिसी, द ग्रेटेस्ट पॉलिसी बाय a politician living or dead in independent India, since independent India, is the midday meal scheme. Every single day, 130 million Indian children go to school so that they may get wiser, they may get healthier through nutritious food. And who implemented it? K. Kamraj, who never even went to school.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ranganathan. We'll be moving. Absolutely. Please go ahead.
बस एक सेंटेंस, ये बहुत बार विषय उठा है। मेरा जो वोटिंग का राइट है वो मेरा नागरिक होना है। एक नागरिक का सबसे ज्यादा जो हक बनता है वो वोट करना है। उसकी काबिलियत, उसकी इंटेलिजेंस, उसकी क्वालिफिकेशन, उसका सो कॉल्ड एंट्रेंस एग्जामिनेशन एक तोहमत है। नो क्वेश्चन, मैं नागरिक हूं, मेरा राइट है ये डिसाइड करना मेरे देश की सरकार क्या, गवर्नेंस क्या है।
पॉलिटिशियंस का एंट्रेंस एग्जाम होना चाहिए।
Okay. Can we go to the gentleman sitting there? Please.
Okay. With all the points that the panel has put across today, I only have one question. For the common man to recognize that they are being manipulated, regardless of the party manipulating them, isn't political education what we should be striving for? The very education that the state apparatus has a control over, and what does the panel has to say over that?
Okay. Actually, in short, yes, you're right. There should be political education. There should be public education. There should be public engagement. There should be civics, ethics. Each of these issues is broadly discussed, but any more exercise that we can do, we should do.
Thank you so much. And we'll go. That was a very nice short question answer. We'll go there. Can we please, Sanjay, over there, the mic.
Thank you. I have only limited 2 questions, but before that,
one question, please.
Okay, one question, but before that, 3 answers. पहला भाटी सर के लिए, भाटी सर, I totally agree कि सपा पार्टी बिल्कुल
next time we can have you on the panel.
बिल्कुल, I totally agree कि सपा पार्टी बिल्कुल पैसे नहीं लेती वोट के टिकट के लिए, क्योंकि एक तो आप लोगों के पास ज्यादा बच्चे भी नहीं है, और दूसरा
Okay, I'm sorry. Just can you ask your one question, please?
ज्यादा होना जरूरी है। दूसरा मेरा क्वेश्चन पैनल से था, who is for the motion कि इलेक्शंस आर फ्री एंड फेयर।
हाँ जी।
I don't पहले तो रंगनाथन सर की क्वेरी थी कि आप होते कौन हो पूछने वाले, कि इवन आफ्टर सो मेनी इयर्स ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस वी आर क्वेश्चनिंग दिस। सर, मैं बीजेपी का ही सपोर्टर था। Currently I'm practicing a law at Supreme Court, but my question is कि who was L.K. Advani in the capacity who said कि election commissioner must be appointed within these 3 people also appointed, like Chief Justice, leader of opposition, and the Prime Minister. It was Anu Barnawal judgment who made it compulsory by the Supreme Court कि election commissioner के appointment में ये 3 लोग होने चाहिए। However, Parliament came कि ये law नहीं है और वो अपना कुछ law ले आए। तो how does this constitute कि election अभी free and fair है?
ठीक, thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
So, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Advani was at that point of time, I think the president of the BJP or someone who's really a top 1 or 2. So when he said it, everyone agreed in the BJP that yes, the CEC should be chosen by a committee that comprises of 3 members, and one of them is the Chief Justice, the other is Prime Minister, and the third is this. Precisely because he disagreed with the way CECs had been elected previous to that. Number 2, the Supreme Court did not mandate for the Chief Justice to be included. It suggested it. And then it left it to the government that speciously formed a law where it chose as the third member not being Chief Justice, but Cabinet Minister.
Understood. And I'm so sorry, we won't be able to take any more questions. You can email them to me and I'll send it to them. How about that? You have my email. And I'm going to invite the Vice President of the Union now, Mr. Araman, to announce the results as well as give a short closing speech before we stop at 8 exactly. Thank you.
Before you announce the results like Rahul Gandhi, I don't believe in the result. This is rigged.
Now, unlike the panelists here, I will stick to the deadline of 8 p.m. So, good evening, everyone. Namaste. I'm Ariman Pragya, the Vice President of Delhi Union. On behalf of our entire team here, I would like to begin by extending my heartfelt thanks to all of our speakers and to each one of you for joining us this evening. Today's discussion has reminded us that difficult questions should not be avoided. They should be confronted openly, honestly, and respectfully. That, after all, is the hallmark of a true, strong democracy. One where every perspective is heard, every side has the opportunity to be represented, and where thoughtful dialogue carries greater weight than the loudest voice. I'd also like to thank all of you in the audience. You're more powerful than you know. The strength of the debate lies with you, your vote. Today you listened, formed your own opinions, and participated with your votes. Now in Delhi Union, our vote system functions a little bit differently. The outcome is not determined simply by who had more votes, but we look at how many minds changed during the course of the debate. And that is on display here today. The side that had more votes had less retention of votes. So, pre-debate, the opposition had 25% more votes. But in the post, the opposition was ahead, but now only by 23%. And now it gives me great pleasure to announce the winning side of Delhi Union Episode 5, by a mere 2%, is the proposition. This is by far the most narrow margin we've had, and it shows the value of this space, where every argument was challenged by the audience, by members on the panel, and by every viewpoint was questioned. That is the idea on which Delhi Union was founded. That is the idea which we will take forward with us. And before we conclude, I'd once again like to thank all of our speakers, our guests, and the entire Delhi Union team for making this event and one more success. We look forward to seeing you once again. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.